Just while we're waiting for the rest of council to join, I just wanted to apologize for being a little bit behind schedule. We were in a meeting that just ran a little bit late. So appreciate your patience.
Hi, Rob.
Guys,
Rosemary, Alicia. Very nice. DG Blair. Chuck.
Neil there.
Oh, nice to see that participation out there. Neil, Phil. Great. Hey, Nerys.
You got me stuck up in the attic here.
Okay, who have we got? Have we got everybody here?
I believe we
Hey,
do.
Ross. Sorry. Sue Ellen.
We're good to
Bonnie.
go. So many familiar faces. It's so nice.
Yeah. Have we got a council roll call there, Hope? Have we got everybody or?
Yeah, I believe we have everyone.
Okay. That's great. We're ready to go then, Hope?
I'm ready if you are.
Well, I'm certainly ready. Well, thank you very much, everybody, and from members of the public. This is the regular council meeting, Monday, April 27th. Sorry for the delay. We had a closed meeting before this, and it got into some discussion at the end that had to be taken care of. Anyway, I apologize for the delay. And so we'll go right to the approval of the agenda and the introduction of the late items. Hope.
Yes, we have a number of items that were circulated to council by email. Agenda item 3.7, which is the water system user rate bylaws for 2020. Staff are recommending deferral just until the next council meeting on May 11th. There were some changes requested by members of council and the water districts. So we're just going to bring those back on May 11th.
Okay.
Item 3.8, we have revised parcel tax rate bylaws. There was just some changes in there as well. And then we have a number of letters just regarding motorized vehicle use on Mount Gardner.
Okay.
And one letter regarding the speed bylaw, which is item 6.4 of the agenda.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Anybody have any other comments on the agenda? Somebody move to approve it, please. We got anybody there?
I see
I'm gonna,
and David.
I'll move.
okay, thank you. All second then, and all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so we got everybody good. So public comments. Now, Rosemary, I must apologize because I talked to Hope and we actually had quite a few people who wanted to talk here. So we have six speakers. So we're going to get about 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes per. I hope that works for you, Rosemary.
Yep.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. All right, Hope, have you got the list?
I do. So first on the list is Rosemary. And
Okay,
it's regarding trails on Mount Gardner.
thank you.
Great. So, do you want me to go, Gary?
Sure, go.
So good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. So I'm here about the debate in our community as to whether motorized vehicles should be allowed on Mount Gardner. So I'm going to use my 1 minute of my presentation to share my screen. And I hope you can all see it. I'm showing a video, and this is an edited version of the original available on YouTube, produced by Kevin Bernard, who's president of the Bowen Trail Riders Association. And the reason I'm showing this video is because it captures the reason for the debate. People in this community clearly respond very differently to what you are about to see. So here we go.
Welcome to Bowen Island, home to some of the hardest enduro riding on the West Coast, and nobody knows about it.
Jeez.
So I fully acknowledge that there are those in our community for whom this activity is fun, thrilling, the way they experience the outdoors. But when I watch this, what I see is a disregard for the environment that I find hard to understand and deeply disturbing. This activity is certainly incompatible with our responsibility to preserve and protect the mountain ecosystem of Mount Gardner and its resident wildlife. It's also incompatible with hikers, on-island hikers, and the many that come from off-island, incompatible in so many ways. Safety concerns, the impact on their experience of the natural world. We've gone through an extensive branding exercise on our island, a branding exercise to define who we are, not only for ourselves, but to draw others to this island. And what do we resonate with? What draws others? Words in our branding such as peaceful, green, safe, walking. This activity is so incompatible with how we define ourselves. Mount Gardner could so easily become a major draw for off-island, off-road vehicles. In addition to the video I've shown you, there are others on YouTube. There's one that has over 5,000 views, and it's actively encouraging people to come from off-island with their off-road vehicles. It's basically advertising Mount Gardner for this purpose. So I'll close by saying to Council, we need to get ahead of this now. I urge you to act proactively, work with the Council, do whatever needs doing to designate Mount Gardner as off limits for motorized vehicles. Thanks.
Thank you, Rosemary. Anybody have any questions? All right, thanks, Rosemary. Appreciate that. Next, so.
Phil Osborne is next regarding same.
Okay.
Thanks very much. And good evening, Mayor, Andrew, and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I'm here to talk also about the agenda item regarding provincial trails on Mount Gardner. I'm speaking on behalf of the Bowen Island Trail Society tonight. We're basically a nonprofit society that was set up a few years ago to represent the interests of non-motorized recreational trail users on the island. We have a membership of about 140 members and affiliated members that are active within the society. We're part of the coalition partnership that works with the Crown regarding stewardship of trails, and we have been working with the other Crown partnership members in a number of projects. Basically, you've got a summary that I sent, and I'm gonna, forgive me, but I'm going to be fairly brief to give other people a chance to talk as well. But basically, we had a number of members, and our input was put together after receiving a lot of feedback over the past several months from our membership regarding a number of the motorized use proposals. And many of those concerns relate to a number of concerns that were raised previously by Rosemary Knight. They relate to effects on the environment, safety issues and safety concerns regarding potential interactions with non-motorized users. And we've basically come to the meeting tonight to seek some, I think, some guidance from council on what the municipality can do in terms of helping us to have a dialogue, a respectful dialogue about this issue, to get an appropriate kind of consultation process into place to address aspects of trail use on the island, including how we can establish some form of use designation, and for review of proposals that come along like this, which are really, to us, they look like development proposals as opposed to simply maintenance and upkeep aspects, which we're at the moment we're more focused on. So our request is really, can we develop some kind of appropriate consultation process with regard to trail use, and can we look at some of these issues collectively as a community, as opposed to having, you know, more of a unilateral decision made, which is out of everyone's control. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you, Phil. Any questions from council? Okay, thanks, Phil. Appreciate that.
Nerys Poole is
Oh.
next.
Okay. Nerys?
Hi, I'm here.
Okay, good.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
sure can.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a first for me for presentation to Council via Zoom.
Yeah.
I am speaking tonight on behalf of the Bowen Island Conservancy, who sent you a letter in February with an accompanying memo that I prepared about Bowen Island jurisdiction over Crown lands.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to ask Council to use all the tools they may have to ensure the public on Bowen is heard before there is any further approval or activity by the province to allow motorized vehicle access on Mount Gardner. I know Tom Blackbird is speaking later to you. I don't know what he's going to say. I don't know if he has the legal qualifications to speak about our municipal jurisdiction over Crown lands. I rather doubt it, since he allowed the construction of Easy Street 3 years ago without any, as far as I'm aware of, without any consultation with either council or the community. How could this trail construction have occurred when our official community plan notes the need for development permits in environmentally sensitive areas, the need for development permits in watershed, aquifer, and stream protection areas? There's no question that the road construction done in the past and any new road construction is within these areas. Mount Gardner is our community watershed, and it is critical that BIM, Bowen Island Municipality, be involved in any work that occurs in this area. I have noted in my memorandum that you have received previously, and again, I sent it in tonight, that our OCP identifies these areas within the Crown lands on Mount Gardner. I've further noted other enactments that require the province to consult and to listen to the municipality when performing any work on these Crown lands within our boundaries. If Mr. Blackbird is taking the position that he, as a provincial representative, can approve whatever he likes on Crown lands within our municipality, he's wrong. Apart from our legal jurisdiction to regulate and control these activities on Crown lands, there's the province's own trail strategy that emphasizes the importance of collaboration when planning activities on any Crown lands. I have not seen any collaboration from the province or with the community as a whole, and certainly there wasn't on the Easy Street when it was constructed, and not recently with the most recent work. The Conservancy does not support motorized activity on Mount Gardner. It is too dangerous, too noisy, and too damaging to the environment. The trails of Mount Gardner should be left to those who enjoy the peace of nature as Rosemary described and as we like to portray ourselves, and those who want to self-propel themselves on the mountain, whether it's by walking, running, or biking. Thank you.
Thank you, Nerys. Any questions, council? Okay, thanks, Nerys.
DG Blair is next.
Okay. DG, you there?
Yeah. Hi, just
Okay.
was clicking on the wrong button there. Sorry about that.
No worries.
So my name is DG Blair, and I'm here speaking to you this evening as a co-chair of the Bowen Nature Club and comments on the trails on Mount Gardner, similar to others. So good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak. For those who are not familiar, the Nature Club is dedicated to the enjoyment and preservation of Bowen Island's diversity. We were founded in 1985, and we're a member of the Federation of BC Naturalists, also known as BC Nature. Our members and guests are frequent users of all the trails on Bowen Island, including those on Mount Gardner. We have understood about the proposal to build multi all-terrain vehicle access to the summit of Mount Gardner, and that the idea is to increase recreational riding of four-wheeled ATVs and trail motorbikes, and that we have seen the roughed-in sections and the mapping of these routes. We did an inspection back in January and found varying degrees of damage to the natural environment on the Mount Gardner trail system where these areas are, which included cutting of small standing trees, cutting of larger logs and fallen trees, and erosion of the forest floor by motorized vehicles that have been on the trails. We haven't completed an inspection of all of the routes. We're very concerned about the roughing in of trails and that they've already created environmental damage, and that any further trails and or intensified use of these routes will make the harm that's been done to date to the forest floor further, and also cause damage downslope due to erosion and sedimentation. We're also very concerned about construction of trails is contrary to our club's mandate and would lead to frequent conflicts with hikers and other non-motorized recreationalists, as well as wildlife. The current condition of the trail network on Radar Hill, obviously another piece of Crown land, seems to give a clear indication of the extent of damage that can be expected to accumulate on Mount Gardner if such trails go ahead. We are alarmed that the trails BITRA is operating independently and has begun construction of trails without obtaining prior consensus of the coalition and with consensus of the community of Bowen. In view of the initial damage that we've observed and the potential for further harmful impacts, we are of the opinion that the existing roughed-in routes need to be assessed to ascertain whether remediation is justified and be decommissioned and or abandoned. In closing, we join the Conservancy and others in expressing our opposition to the development of non-motorized uses of Mount Gardner trails. In our view, the risks of implementing such trails far outweigh the benefits. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thanks, DG. Any questions, council? Thanks, DG. Appreciate that. Hope.
Ross Beaty is next.
Okay.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and
Hello, Ross.
councilors. Thank you for the chance to speak. I'm just here speaking as a member of the public. I'm a frequent user of the trails on Bowen Island and especially on Mount Gardner. It's right behind where I live. And I use Mount Gardner with my wife and many of our neighbors who just love going up there. They seek peace and tranquility and exercise, self-propelled exercise. I cannot tell you what would be a worse experience than going along those roads, those trails, those beautiful trails in that beautiful forest, and hearing the noise of a motorized vehicle hacking up the trail system, damaging the forest. I mean, it's the exact opposite experience to what I seek when I go there. When I get to the top of Mount Gardner, I often see literally dozens and dozens of people who've come up from the north side, from the ferry, who come over from Vancouver and all the regions around Vancouver, and they're seeking the same thing that I am. They're seeking the peace and tranquility of the hiking experience and the exercise you get from it. There are many places on Bowen Island where motorized vehicles can use and go and have their fun and do their thing. I'm not trying to shut down people who like motorized vehicles, fine. It's perfectly fine. There's a lot of places on Bowen and there's a lot of places on the mainland that people can have that fun and seek and have no hassle, no conflict, no worries with anyone else. Mount Gardner is not one of them. Quite frankly, I'm shocked that this is even a council item, that you're wasting time on this, because it seems so self-evident that the council should do everything it can to shut down this idea of motorized use, shut down the idea of trails being built to allow motorized use, the damage to the environment that it all brings, the reduction of personal experience by hikers, all of that good stuff that hikers bring to Bowen Island. You're just reducing their enjoyment. So as a general member of the public and user of the trails, I cannot say more of my opposition to this idea. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ross. Any questions from council? All right, thanks, Ross.
Last but certainly not least, Neil Boyd.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Gary. My comments also relate to the visit of Tom Blackbird and the use of Mount Gardner by motorized vehicles. My wife and I have lived on Hiker's Trail, a principal link to the top of Mount Gardner, for almost 40 years. During that time, we've seen significant changes in the use of Hiker's Trail. When we moved to our property in 1981, Hiker's Trail was called Pit Road, primarily because there was an old gravel pit just a few hundred meters up the road. In those early years, we used to see quite a mix. Some Department of Highways trucks accessing the gravel pit, some people dumping garbage in the same area, along with a few hikers and less commonly cyclists. About 20 years ago, we began to see and hear a few off-road dirt bikes and ATVs. But a little more than a decade ago, the patterns changed. The road became used primarily by hikers and a few cyclists, and the number of people with ATVs and dirt bikes diminished significantly. Perhaps most significantly, our local neighborhood approached the municipality asking that the name of the road be changed from Pit Road to Hiker's Trail, an indication of the transformation that had been occurring over time. The council unanimously agreed to our request. Throughout the year, we now see a steady stream of hikers walking up Hiker's Trail. On some weekends, we literally see hundreds of hikers, a dramatic change from just a decade ago, and one that we welcome. And now we have a suggestion that there be motorized access to the summit of Mount Gardner, Easy Street, approved by the province in 2017 with no meaningful community consultation. And we learned that there is an effort on the part of a very small group, the Bowen Trail Riders Association, to try to encourage other off-road riders to come to Bowen to, quote, share the mountain. This is a bad policy, economically and environmentally. If we encourage ATVs and dirt bikes, the hikers will stop coming, and the ferry will be jammed with trailers pulling a variety of these vehicles. Let's not be foolish about this. This is not what Bowen Islanders want. There can be no safe or sensible mixed use of Mount Gardner trails. My wife and I, walking with our dogs, recall being surprised on several previous occasions by dirt bikes and ATVs moving very quickly and loudly past us. Not a pleasant experience, and the fumes linger. I'm quite sure that our council is united in opposition to motorized access to the summit outside of the rare possibility of emergency use, and support for this initiative on Bowen Island can only be found within a small minority of individuals. I understand that there's an appetite for use of these vehicles in a recreational context, despite the lack of exercise and the waste of scarce fossil fuels. And I will add that I do know and I do like a number of people who engage in this activity. Perhaps there are some places on Bowen, I'm sure there are some places on Bowen that would be appropriate for local users to engage in this practice. But Easy Street and motorized access to the summit of Mount Gardner via what is now known as Hiker's Trail, that makes for very bad public policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Any questions from council? All right, thank you all. Appreciate the comments. And we're going to move on to the consent agenda at this time. Does anybody on council have anything they'd like to pull off consent agenda for more clarification?
I just wanted to note that item
3.7.
the recommendation, just for clarification, being replaced with that recommendation that's in the on-table package, that the water system bylaws be deferred to the May 11th meeting. So just noting that we don't need to pull it.
So it's just deferred then. Oh,
That's right.
the whole of section 3.7.
Yes.
Okay.
Maureen
you.
has her hand up.
Okay, Maureen.
I'd like to pull the correspondence that's on the agenda, 3.9 and 3.10.
3.9, okay, and 3.10, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Then I would ask the council approve the items as outlined in the April 27th, 2020 consent agenda as amended. A second on that?
I see Rob and Sue Ellen's hand.
All right, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah,
How's that look, Hope?
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I
All
just,
right.
before we proceed,
Yes,
I just wanted to make a note that those who joined for public comments, we would just ask that you leave the meeting and view it using our BIM YouTube channel. It's just really hard to manage all the faces and things in terms of voting. So we would appreciate, we'd love seeing you, but we would appreciate if you view it using the YouTube channel. The link is on the agenda package. It's also on our website under council meetings. And if you want to come back for question period at the end of the meeting, you're welcome to rejoin the meeting then.
all right, so we're gonna move on to delegations. And we have Tom Blackbird, District Recreation Officer, Recreation Sites and Trails BC, Ministry of Forest Lands and Natural Resources, Operations and Rural Developments. The presentation is understanding jurisdictional boundaries and duties related to Crown lands on Bowen Island. Thank you very much for being here, Tom, and I'll just pass it right over to you if you're here.
I am here. Thank you very much. I just had to find my, I had to unmute it there. I was clicking on the wrong button for a minute.
Oh, no worries.
It's taken a bit getting used to all this adjusting, but thank you very much for the opportunity to come and present to the Mayor and Council. So I have a presentation that I had submitted. I'm not sure where that's at.
Just gonna bring it up right now.
Okay.
Bear with me really quick. Hang on. Everyone see this?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, so will you be clicking on it to hope to move it forward?
Yep, you can just cue me, but I'll try to keep up with you.
Okay, all right. So Recreation Sites and Trails BC, we try and develop, maintain, manage a network of recreation sites and trails to provide safe, quality recreational opportunities for public on Crown land in the Chilliwack Natural Resource District. Go to the next one. Just to describe, the Chilliwack Natural Resource District is bordered by Bowen Island on the west, Manning Park on the east, Boston Bar on the north, and we go down to the US border. The district covers approximately 1.4 million hectares. It's the most densely populated district in the province, and the 2016 numbers were about 4.7 million. Rec Sites and Trails, or RST I'll refer to, BC. Chilliwack manages, we've got 50 sites, approximately 960 campsites and 52 established trails in the district. Just some points that we have. Recreation sites and trails are in the working forest. They are not parked, nor are they protected. They are on traditional lands of First Nations who hold Aboriginal title and rights, and they are on Crown land that is managed by provincial government. Next. Okay. So RST, BC manages land. So what we're trying to do is a collaborative process that seeks to build understanding and consensus among a diverse set of users, despite interest and political affiliations. We try and get people together to talk and have their discussions, aside from making decisions in a silo. We try and use social responsibility. It's our intention to improve how services are provided and develop relationships with public, organizations, stakeholders, and partners that are based on trust and transparency. And when I talk about partners, what I always refer to as partners is when we develop a site or establish a site, we enter into a partnership agreement. And that partnership agreement gives somebody the ability to operate and manage the land on our behalf or in conjunction with us. So that's what we refer to as partners. Environmental responsibility. Our goal again, and we're trying to encourage responsible use of Crown land, the sustainability of the Chilliwack Natural Resource District, and reduce the impact that recreational use has on the environment. Some of the ways that we try and do this is we try and deal with having people on defined trails. We try and set some standards to keep people out of the creeks, developing some of the guidelines and developing trails where we may be able to harden them and it causes less erosion on the ground. So the legislative authority to manage recreation sites and trails is set out in the Forest and Range Practices Act and specifically the Forest Recreation Regulations. So those are the two things that we use to guide. And the establishment of a recreation site or trail allows the district recreation officer to regulate recreation use on the land versus Crown land use. And the reason why I put that separate is it's still Crown land, but once we have a designation on it, we are able to then make rules, establish guidelines to try and have people follow them. On Crown land, it doesn't have a designation. It does become a free-for-all, and it's harder to control, and you'd be very hard-pressed to find somebody who's going to be willing to try and enforce something on that. Next one. And the establishments. RSTBC works primarily within the following sections of FERPA. Section 57, 56, and 58. So Section 57 is an authorization to build or construct a trail. Now, that is not a legal establishment. Basically, what it is a map notation in our GIS system. And that just tells people that there might be a trail there, and all it is to construct or build. Section 56 is the legal establishment of a recreation site, which includes several named type of sites. And the reason why I put this down here is we can establish a recreation site for camping under Section 56. We could establish a trail under Section 56, an interpretive forest, polygons, trail networks, because it's just a wide variety. It's sort of a catch-all, but that gives us the legal designation. That legal designation also puts it into the system, and that partner, whoever we sign up with a partner on that, becomes a stakeholder. So if there was going to be a logging company that was going to do some harvesting, when they put their map into the system, it's going to pop up with the Section 56 establishment, and whoever's got the partnership and RST as well would then get a referral, and we'd have our chance to have an opportunity and provide input into a referral. So that's what a Section 56 gives you a little bit more authority to do some of that. Section 58 is an establishment made to control the type of recreational activity for a variety of purposes. And this can be very specific or it can be very broad, but it is specifically for recreational activities. A couple of examples that I've got where we've got, there was camping, which it was very disruptive in an area. So what they've done is they put a Section 58 that said no camping in this area and no parking on the roads from 11 till 7 in the morning. And that was very specific. So, and that is an enforceable rule. So those are the three primary sections that we work with when we're doing our establishments. And even when we establish a site or a trail under section 56, if we're going to put a trail through there, we still have to authorize it under section 57. So you can have a 56 with a 57 on it, but that sort of delineates your line work of when you're putting trails in place. And that's what a section 57 allows you to do. The reason why we push to try and have some of these designations in place is some of the busier areas that we have, you're finding that people will go out and blaze a trail. There's no requirement to get any approval to blaze a trail. But because we are so densely populated and people are wanting to get out, when you go out and blaze a trail, by the time you come back to actually come out and start working on the trail, it's already beaten into the ground because there's so many people that are looking for new trails. So that's one of the things that we're looking for, is we're trying to have people come to us prior to doing this. One of the other things that we've also implemented in the Chilliwack district is a test document, and that is the Trails Environmental Screening Tool. So what we've done is whenever we're going to be doing a trail, we ask the group who's providing or who's asking to do the trail to put their line work in, do the paperwork on it, and that will help show us where species at risk may be, archaeological sites, any other legal jurisdictions that we have to consult with prior to even moving forward. And that's just something that's done on a computer. There's actually nothing on the ground at all. So once that's done, we can then move forward and say, okay, this is something that may work, and then we'd start going out to consultation. Okay, you can go to the next one. Yeah. So what I did was I shortened this down. I just wanted to make sure that we had enough time for discussions and comments, because I realized that a lot of the stuff that was being brought forward was in regards to the trail that had been proposed for going up to the top of Mount Gardner. So I wanted to leave some time to have a bit of a discussion on that, but also if you have any other questions about any of the stuff that I presented.
All right, well, thank you very much, Tom. And yes, obviously, we're concerned about Mount Gardner and the motorized trail system up there. What is the status with Easy Street as far as your department is concerned?
Easy Street is one that came in before the coalition. I'm not sure once the partnership or once the papers were signed for the designation, we entered into a partnership. At that point, we had BITRA who would come forward. They talked to us about the trail. We looked at some of the information they had. We went and looked at the trail where it was. It was a trail that had no real designation on it. So what we did was we authorized that one under a section 57. So that is only to authorize and build. And the reason why we try and do that is we try and implement with a 57 is we try and get some of our rules put in place, some of our safety guidelines. And that's something that we've still been working on, is trying to bring it up to a standard. Because if a trail is on Crown land and there's no designation on it, it's a free for all. And yeah, we understand that if public goes on it or somebody else gets on it, there's no, we have liability. So that's why we try and bring it up to a certain standard, whether it be marking, giving the trail a rating, making sure that they're staying out of creeks, just trying to make it in a safe manner. Like I said, there's still people who want to go out and have a different type of fun than everybody else. And that's what we try and do, is we try and have RST is very collaborative. We try and have shared areas or a multiple group of people, not so much for single areas. We will look at single stuff, but it's like I said, we try and have a balance between a variety of users.
That's good. Just very quickly, Tom, where would the next motorized trails be in proximity to Bowen Island or the Lower Mainland, for that matter, metro area? Closest.
Motorized or non-motorized?
Motorized.
There's some motorized ones in North Vancouver. There's motorized ones in Squamish, and there's also motorized on Sunshine Coast. Those are the closest ones to you.
Yes, North Van would be definitely the closest. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anybody else got some questions for Tom?
Sure.
There's Sue Ellen.
Sorry. Councillor Hawking had his hand up first.
Okay. David, go ahead then, and then Sue Ellen.
Yeah, thank you, Gary, and thank you, Tom, for your presentation. And I appreciate your need to talk to a variety of users and your support for collaborative processes. But the concern, I presume you heard some of the other people who were speaking in the comments earlier, and the real concern about the conflict between motorized use and quiet use, hiking. And so looking at the sections that this is that apply to your work, section 58, you can control the type of a recreational activity. Would you be able to, through section 58, say no motorized vehicle use on the trails on Mount Gardner?
We don't even need to go to section 58 to do that. We could use a section, under section 56, I can make rules.
Okay.
And that's basically, once we establish rules, it's sort of like, that's what we put in place. Section 58 is something that is signed off by the Assistant Deputy Minister. So in order to put a section 58 in place, it is a several-year process. They don't like to sign it off unless they're sure everything has been crossed, and they like to make sure that it's something that's going to be in place for a while. A section 56, the ones that give us the ability to make the rules on it, we can be very reactive. And once I write a rule down and sign my name to it, it becomes enforceable.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That's interesting that there's a much simpler approach. So if council were to express, or if we were to have some sort of consultation with the Bowen Island public that would be supportive of a move to discontinue motorized use on the trails, how would we move forward on something like that?
On something like that, what I would do is, as a statutory decision maker on it, what I would do is I would look for something that would be a written submission to myself, basically outlining what some of the concerns would be, what like the issue, what some of the rationale behind it, and just bringing it forward like that. And then what I would do is I would take it, I would weigh those decisions, weigh the proposal that comes forward. I'll look at all the other information that we have, gather some, and I may have to do a bit of fact finding on my own. And then I would look at that and then move forward and making a decision on it.
Okay,
Thank
you very much.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've done, I think you've seen in some of the letters where I've had one of my recreation technicians, Dan Bradley, I've sort of had him be the lead on Bowen Island. And primarily the reason why I do that, the statutory decision maker, I don't want to have my decisions fettered by working with individual groups. So when something comes to me, I'm very open and very neutral on making those decisions.
Good. All right. Thank you very much. That's my question.
Maureen had her hand up next, Sue Ellen, and then Allison.
Okay, Maureen.
Thank you, Gary. And thank you, Tom, for coming over and speaking with us. It's appreciated. I had two questions. One is, are you aware of any other community that has made an argument to prohibit all-terrain vehicles on a trail system?
Yes, I am.
What kind of arguments did they use to convince you?
Noise, pollution, just general disturbance, and a bit of being overly rowdy.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question is, I understand that you're the statutory decision maker in this scenario. How does your decision-making power relate to the decision-making powers of the municipality in this context?
In this content, it would be, because it's Crown land, what we would do is we weigh the municipalities as their input comes in to us as a statutory decision maker. Municipalities are something that we weigh higher than more of, like say if it was just a group that was coming forward. And the reason why is municipalities have more of a vested interest in the areas, especially when it's adjacent to or surrounding a recreation site or an established area like Mount Gardner. So
Okay,
we try
thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, Sue Ellen. Thanks, Maureen. Can't hear you, Sue Ellen.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. I think most of my questions have been answered. My concern is that it sounds like these changing uses that we've got in our official community plan and things that we can ask that they be taken into account in your decisions. And so I'm pleased to hear that. And I think well, we'll see what happens, but I'm very interested in following up with you. I'm wondering about if you're aware that Bowen Island is part of the Islands Trust area. And so we have a responsibility as a municipality within the Islands Trust to preserve and protect. So we're kind of a unique community in that regard, as well as in terms of our obligations, as well as to the Provincial Islands Trust Act, as well as to our community who we know through so many documents care about the green oasis, the peace and tranquility, as you've heard it expressed here, the nature surrounding us. So I'm very interested in following up with you. And I was wondering what the word collaboration meant in terms of how some of these trails were established earlier. And now I'm happy to hear that perhaps we, the municipality and the public, can have a say. Would that be correct?
Yes, that would be. What I've been doing with the group, the coalition that they call themselves, there was 3 members that were a part of it. And one of the things that I was talking to them about was how they were going to reach out to the community, whether that was going to be through open forums, whether it was going to be through a web page, something that they could go back and forth and share their ideas. There was a bit of disconcern with the group because they thought they were making the decisions and they lived there and they didn't want to make a decision that was going to be wrong. I tried telling them, I said, you're not making the decisions. What you guys are doing is sitting there, sharing ideas and discussing it. And then when that comes forward as a statutory decision maker, I would be the person making the decision based on some of their input. So that's what I was looking at. And we're at the point right now where we're actually trying to build the partnership back up and have a few more users in there who could come and participate. And like I said, that's where we want to have an open forum. We want to have the ability to share ideas and bring, whether people are supportive or not supportive of it, this is the ideas, and then the time is to have those discussions.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Allison has her hand up.
Allison?
Okay. Thanks, Tom, for coming and talking to us. I think we've all got tons of questions. So I'm just not quite clear on Easy Street. You said it was done before the coalition. So what process is Easy Street done under 56, 57, or 58?
Well, okay, the site, the polygon around Mount Gardner was established as a 6 and 56. Then once that trail was brought forward, that is a 57.
Okay, so the polygon was section what?
56.
Okay, so, and then when did Easy Street get actually done?
Easy Street, when we went and looked at it, they had a large portion of the trail already in place. So it was something that was already there. And we tried doing okay, let's do put it under a 57 so we could start trying to work with the group and get them to try and bring it up to a standard.
Okay, and the section 57 for Easy Street is with the coalition, or?
No, the section 57 was with BITRA to authorize the trail.
Okay.
Sorry, who?
Bowen Island Trail.
Bowen Island Trails Riders Association.
Yeah. Trail Riders, okay.
Yeah.
And now, how do we get copies of these section 57 or section 56?
You could ask me. I can provide those with you. I'm the one that produces them. Okay. So myself and my staff, and then we can provide those with you if you'd like to have a look at them.
I think our Bonnie, our manager of Parks and Environment, would probably be a good source for that.
Sure, sure.
So would that same apply to the partnership agreement with the coalition?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
and then once we sign them off, they are a public document, so if somebody wanted to look at them, they could.
Okay. Now my recollection is that there might be a few other agreements floating around. I recall one for a trail through up in the Valhalla area. So so if we asked for copies of all the section 56, 57, or 58 agreements or documentation for Bowen's Crown lands, would that be something easy to get?
Probably fairly easy. It would take a little bit of digging to pull it together. But if you brought it forward, I'm sure we could work on getting that information rounded up.
Yeah, and I assume there's a bunch of licenses. I don't know if there's anything for any of the trails on what we call Radar Hill or Josephine Ridge, other than the.
I don't believe there is. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a quarry up there which I think was licensed, and the Coast Guard repeater and that sort of stuff. So.
Yes.
Okay. And then I noticed you were doing, or BC Park, somebody was doing a survey for a public survey of, I think, province-wide on the uses of Crown lands. Was that your department?
That we were, the trails program within Rec Sites and Trails, they were doing a survey, and it was basically updating the trail strategy, which had been originally in place since 2011. So this was, we considered a living document. It's just about 10 years old. And so what they were doing was they were doing an update to the policy. It's finished now, the survey portion of it, and it will be put together, I imagine, probably going to be about another 6 months before it's published.
Okay. Are you able with that survey to look at responses by area? Like, it would be interesting to see what the people on Bowen responded.
I'm not sure. I would have to talk to the trails manager and see how detailed he could look at the responses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you talked about collaborating, and so when somebody comes and wants to do one of these agreements and it's on Crown land that's within the boundaries of the municipality, do you refer that, or does your staff refer that to the municipality?
As far as a partnership agreement?
Well, yeah. Well, I think we had some discussions about the partnership agreement, but I don't remember seeing the final thing or anything. But
yeah, ordinarily a partnership agreement, we don't send out for referral. That's just somebody we find as a willing partner who's willing to help us work on the ground. But if we were going to establish a site, which this one was done in 2015, there was a referral package that went out, and it was sent out to a number of different parties.
And the municipality would have been one of them.
One of them, yeah.
Yes.
To the partnership. And what about Easy Street? Was it? I don't remember ever seeing anything.
No, Easy Street was one because it was
before
already,
the time.
it was already there, that we just actually approved that one under a 57 to try and bring it into a standard.
Okay, so Easy Street was a trail that existed long before we incorporated then, I guess, or got worked on without us knowing about it.
Yeah.
Okay. And the partnership agreement is just for maintenance and upkeep of the trails. It's not for creating new trails?
A partnership agreement is for the ongoing maintenance of it, and it could be for the development of new trails, but they have to, what I ask is that the groups come forward with an operational plan, and an operational plan does not mean that it's approved to go ahead. I tell them that this is their hopes and dreams of what they want to try and work on. So if they don't get approval, or if they don't get enough support for it, it might be something that doesn't go forward, but this is a place to put it down, sort of like a drawing board. Let's put it all on paper and let's take it apart and see what works and what doesn't.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anybody else out there? Have a discussion with Tom?
I believe Maureen has her hand up.
Okay, Maureen?
No, we forgot to lower.
All good.
No, that's not the case. Tom, given what you know about what's going on with the trails on our island, what do you see happening in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, what my hope would be that it would basically, the trails would be a little bit safer. The trails would be clearly marked, and we'd be bringing them up to sort of more of a standard where we take some of that liability off of everyone by having some of these standards put in place. What we're seeing right now is we're seeing an increase in trend that, according to the numbers, should be continuing till at least 2024, 2025, although I'm not sure how that's going to play out now because of the implications of COVID, whether that's going to change it or maybe extend it. But we do see a huge increase in people getting outdoors. Our biggest market right now is mountain bikes, and their activity is increasing dramatically. So we've got that happening all over the place. And in Chilliwack alone, we've got hundreds of kilometers of trails just for mountain bikes. Okay. So it is a growing trend.
Thank you.
non-motorized trend though.
Well, electric bikes are coming out and they have just as
No,
much
that's all
power
right.
as motorcycles.
Yeah, true that.
So-
Yeah, absolutely.
RST is actually, I think, the first agency that we've identified and classified electric bikes as motorized.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, because
That's
of the power.
interesting.
Yeah, because of the power and torque, they can do just as much damage in some cases as a motorcycle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of torque there for sure.
Yeah.
Mayor Andrew, I think Rob had his hand up too.
Okay, Rob.
Rob
Go
and
ahead.
then Allison.
And then Allison again. Okay. Go ahead, Rob. You're off your mic.
Sorry about that.
No
Tom,
worries.
thanks a lot for that presentation. The issue that obviously that we're dealing with a bit right now is the trail usage around Mount Gardner, and the usage of motorized vehicles, especially, you know, motorbikes go. I ride a motorbike on the road, but motorbikes going up trails versus people wanting to get out, listen, you know, experience nature, go for a quiet walk. They seem so far apart. Like, I can see how one motorbike could disturb that environment, you know, for a whole afternoon if there was just one person there. Reconcile that, or are these just two usages that are just, they're not going to meet together? They're just not going to be compatible with one another.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Allison.
Well, that was a
I would
question
just
to Tom, I think, right?
I think my question to Tom is sort of picking up a bit on what Rob was just saying. Did I understand you correctly, Tom, in your presentation to say you prefer to have multi-use trails and not single use?
Yes, our sort of RST's stance is to try and have multi-use trails. That's sort of the collaborative approach we'd like to try and have them as more of a shared use. There are some areas where we have identified single-use areas, primarily if it's a safety concern, or if there's an area where we have a common area that's shared, and then we'll get to an area and then branch out into individual uses.
And
So
the
we-
shared uses would be walking, hiking, and regular biking, mountain biking.
Our shared uses right now include motorcycles, ATVs, horses, mountain bikes, hiking. Everything is we consider as shared.
So in the maintenance agreement, the trails that are designated in the maintenance partnership agreement, those are designated as shared use trails, and therefore they could be used by any of those.
No, there
modes of transport?
are trails that the groups came forward with and identified that these were hiking trails and that these were motorized trails. So the motorized guys maintain the motorized ones, and the hikers maintain the hiking ones.
And is Easy Street the only motorized one?
That's the only one that we have on the books right now.
Okay, and in North Van, where they've got the motorized, is that sole use motorized?
No,
So it's actually shared with hikers.
it's shared with hikers, mountain bikers, dog walkers, and 4x4s.
Wow.
Okay, thank you.
Interesting.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tom. I think that's it. And thank you for the very important conversation you're having. Obviously, we've got a bit of an issue on the island here with the motorized segment right now, and we'll see how this all shakes down. But really like what you had to say, like the job you're doing, and we'll be in touch in the future for sure.
Yeah, and when I talked to Bonnie, I did tell her that at any time, if there was questions or anything that comes up, by all means, let me know, and I will. If I don't know the answer, I will find the answer for you.
All right. Well, thanks again, Tom. Really appreciate you coming over and giving us that presentation.
All right. Thanks. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye now. Okay, we're going to move into bylaws. Planning and Development Procedures Bylaw number 494, 2019. Daniel Martin, Manager of Planning and Development. Daniel, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on the agenda tonight is bylaw 494. So it's a bylaw to define procedures under which people will apply for various planning approvals, and staff will process them. So this bylaw received first reading from council at the February 24th meeting. And there are no amendments to the bylaw since that time. At that meeting, council had requested staff hold a public open house to hear public comment on the bylaw. And we advertised for an open house, but we were forced to cancel. It was scheduled for early April, so we canceled it. But what we did instead is we did advertise for comment, and we did email directly a number of previous applicants who had gone through the process, and we thought we'd seek their input on the process and on the bylaw. And we didn't receive any substantial comments, sort of just one-line comments about it. It looks good. So with that feedback that we've received, we have the bylaw back on the agenda tonight, looking for a second and third reading.
Okay, thank you very much. Any discussion here with anybody? We've been through this at quite length, I think, and there has been some changes in it and stuff. But I think the final version here is pretty good. Allison, did you have something you want to say? No? Okay. All right. Well, if nobody's got anything to say, maybe we'll just go straight to the recommendation.
I can read it if you like. Oh, Sue Ellen has her hand up.
Oh, Sue Ellen. Okay, go ahead. You're on.
Sue Ellen.
Sorry, I was looking for the page numbers, which I can't find on the agenda. I'm looking in the wrong place, obviously. Okay, I'm glad to see this. I think it's great that we have some rules and expectations, and so that everybody understands how does development and planning happen on Bowen. And I would like to move the recommendation.
All right, thank you.
That bylaw number 494, 2019, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Planning and Development Procedures bylaw number 494, 2019, be read a second and third time.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's everyone.
Okay, thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you, everyone. 6.2 Municipal and Regional District Tax Program Application. Emma Chow, Island Community Planner. Thank you, Emma.
Oh, Emma, you're just on mute.
Thanks, Hope. So this is my first time presenting on Zoom. Do I just hit the share screen?
So hit the share screen, and then you should have your presentation open, and then just select that screen.
Is this working or?
Not yet.
Again.
I'm happy to do it on my end if you can't figure it out. Oh, yep, there you go.
There you go.
Technology. Nice. Okay, I'm going to try and start the slideshow. Is that still working?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm just bringing back the municipal and regional district tax application that was started at the beginning of the year. And to recap the timeline on this project, most of the components of the application were completed in February, with the bylaw that is in front of council still outstanding for adoption, as well as one missing component, the accommodation sector support, which is required, and I will go into more detail later on in the presentation. For the bylaw, as well as the letter of support from Islands Trust, the application requires specific information be included, namely the designated recipient, designated accommodation area, both of which are Bowen Island Municipality, as well as the desired effective date, which is specified as January 1st, 2021, and the requested tax rate, which is specified as 3% in the current bylaw. The application also requires submission at least 9 months prior to the desired effective date. So in our case of January 1st, 2021, it means we need to submit the application by end of March this year, which has passed. So what that means is the current bylaw would need to have the previous reading rescinded and the bylaw amended to reflect a future further out the 9 months desired effective date to move forward and then have that bylaw reread. The council may also want to consider other amendments based on the consultation feedback. There was an industry open house that was conducted back in March, and the main comment that we got was support for a lower tax rate of 2% rather than the 3% that was specified. We also got comments around the portion that was going towards affordable housing. The current application has half going to affordable housing initiatives and half going to tourism. And the remaining comments were around potential negative impacts versus potential benefits of such a tax. So in general, I would say there were quite a bit of questions around this tax from the accommodation sector and the tourism industry in general, which brings me to the required accommodation sector support that was mentioned earlier. This pertains to accommodation providers that have 4 or more units and do not exclusively advertise online. We have 7 such accommodation providers on Bowen Island as listed here, and we need at least 51% of those units, so there's 65 units in total, need at least 51% of those units in support of the application. However, we only received 14% in support, 77% confirmed not in support, and 9% are unknown, which means the application as it stands would not be accepted by the province. However, we did receive a letter from Tourism Bowen Island offering to help continue working with the accommodation sector to garner support for this application. If the support requirement is met and council still wishes to pursue this application, a number of the components will need to be updated, including the 5-year strategic business plan, the current bylaw as mentioned, so updating that desired effective date, and also the requested tax rate. Those updates would need to be reflected in a new letter of support from Islands Trust, as well as new industry consultation. For now, staff recommends that council defer the short-term accommodation tax bylaw pending further industry consultation.
All right, thank you, Emma. Anybody have any further discussion on this? It's pretty straightforward. We have to get that 51%. There's going to have to be a bit of a sales job. The accommodation people have to see that there's some merit in it for their operation. There's no question.
Allison has her hand up first.
Allison?
It's on the slide with the 7 units. Are the percentages? I've been too punchy today to add all these up in my head. Is it 51% of the total number of units or 51% of the 7 people?
51% based on the number of units.
So basically you need the first 2 and you've got your 51.
That would work.
Yeah, okay. And the 9% unknown, I guess that's maybe just 1? Or is that, not everybody responded, obviously.
Yes,
Yeah.
one provider did not respond.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I'm okay
Michael?
with deferring all this.
Sorry. Sorry, Hope?
Maureen is next.
Okay, Maureen, sorry. Speaker. Yeah.
Sorry. I think the point about we don't really have an option here is most pertinent. So I would like to move the recommendation that bylaw 504/2020, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Short-Term Accommodations Tax Bylaw number 504/2020, be deferred for further industry consultation.
I'll second.
Right.
I'll second.
Is that Michael?
Yep.
Okay, thank you on the second. Any further discussion on this?
I'd like to know what the further industry consultation might look like. Emma, do you have any ideas about that?
At this point, staff does not have any plans for consultation, but we are offering to support tourism in Bowen Island in their efforts. So we could help provide venues, advertising, things like that. But ultimately, it's not part of the short-term rental policy, and we don't have any other direction to actually garner the support.
Do you think that the 7 accommodation providers were aware of the consequences of their decision, that they actually could bring this to a standstill?
The ones that responded in the comments and that had attended the open house were very aware.
Yes.
Okay.
Hope, if I may.
Michael, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Considering that this industry is virtually at a standstill right now, I thoroughly support this motion. This is no time to go ahead with worrying about tax on a business that is closed. So let's defer and pass this on for different times, because, and I thank Emma for her approach on this. It's, no one wants to talk about a tax on an industry that at the moment has been brought to a standstill. So let's move on, please.
I agree. Okay, we have a first and second on that motion.
Yes.
All right, and I'll ask a question. All in favor?
Aye.
How's that look, Hope?
Everyone.
Good, thank you. It's unanimous. All right, we're going to move. Thanks, Emma, and we'll move right on to 6.3, which is bylaw amendments for short-term rental policy number 19-05. And Emma, back to you again. Thank you.
Oh, that's me again. Let me pull that one up. Okay. So these are the bylaw amendments for implementing the short-term rental policy. For context, this was the policy that Council had adopted end of last year with the aim to establish a regulatory approach for short-term rentals to help facilitate fair short-term rental use and mitigate negative impacts on the community. A recap of the project timeline: development of the policy and adoption ran through 2019, last year, and implementation started end of last year and scheduled to end beginning of this year. But as you can see, some project delays have accumulated, which has pushed the schedule out a bit. The original intent of the schedule was to have all the amendments in place so that short-term rental operators on the island could be licensed and operating legally ahead of the tourism season. With COVID, the urgency is no longer there, as we're unlikely to have a tourist season this spring. But we will still move ahead with the amendments so that they are ready when tourism returns to the island. This is the updated detailed schedule for implementation. And as you can see, the bylaw amendments are scheduled for adoption sometime in late spring, early summer. This will be followed by an awareness campaign and information sessions for operators. Enforcement and reporting back to council will not happen until next year, 2021. The bylaw amendments were directed under Council Resolution 19615, specifically for land use bylaw, business license bylaw, and the bylaw notice enforcement bylaw. And before I get into the details of the amendments, I just wanted to go over the objectives of the policy. The short-term rental policy wanted to permit dwelling units to be used for short-term rental and such use to be regulated to minimize impacts on neighborhoods and long-term housing, chiefly through accountability of the operators and effective enforcement. So with these objectives in place, I can link them to the amendments that are being brought forward. The first, permitting the use, is under the land use bylaw. This will be amended to define residential guest accommodation. And the key bits of this definition is that it is an accessory use of a dwelling unit, ordinarily occupied as a residence and rented out for periods of less than 30 consecutive days. The bed and breakfast use will also be amended to allow limited kitchen facilities. It currently is not allowed any kitchen. And this is directed under the policy as a result of community feedback. and to help bed and breakfast stay competitive as residential guest accommodations with full kitchens are being permitted. Both residential guest accommodations and bed and breakfasts will be permitted on properties containing secondary suites and detached secondary suites. Moving on to regulating this use, there will be a section added to the land use bylaw with regulations specific to residential guest accommodations. This will include the use allowed up to 120 days per calendar year, a maximum of 2 guests per bedroom, and a minimum of 1 parking space per bedroom. Moving on to the business licensing bylaw. They will further support the regulation of short-term rentals by requiring a business license to operate and that the license be displayed in all advertising, and upon application showing proof of adequate insurance, disclosing number of bedrooms, guests, and parking spaces, as well as specifying a license fee of $300. The fee amount is based on research of 11 communities, which averaged out to $356 was the average fee we found. We took an estimate of the administrative and enforcement costs and came closer to $300. So that is the amount proposed in the amendment. The business licensing bylaw will also include terms of use, including the requirement for a designated individual for every residential guest accommodation. They will act as the primary contact, and they must be available 24 hours during the time that the residential guest accommodation is rented, and they must respond to any nuisance complaints within 2 hours. And to help enable effective enforcement, the bylaw notice enforcement bylaw is amended to include a penalty for operating a residential guest accommodation without a license. The first contravention will be more of a warning with a penalty of $150. However, any further contravention will have the maximum penalty of $500 per day of contravention. This was also based on research of about a dozen communities, and the average penalty was $350, but we did find that half of those communities actually did impose the full $500. So we felt that $150 for first contravention and $500 for further was reasonable. So that is a summary of the amendments. Next steps would include external referral to Islands Trust, as well as internal referrals to the Advisory Planning Commission, Community Economic Development Committee, and the Housing Advisory Committee. Staff also recommends a virtual open house, as this will affect quite a few stakeholders. And as mentioned before, the schedule has adoption of these amendments scheduled for late spring. And that's the presentation. Staff recommends that Council give first reading to bylaws number 501, 502, and 503 for the land use bylaw, the business licensing bylaw, and the bylaw notice enforcement bylaw. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Emma. Further discussion, anybody? I gotta get back.
Yes, please.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Okay, Emma, firstly, I recognize that you put a lot of work on this, but I'm going to want to challenge the 120 days. For me, there's 2 issues here. One's quite small point and one a much larger point. The 120 days. Could you just say why we decided to put a 120-day limit, which is a complete antithesis to any form of tourism planning? And what was the reason for this, and how do you intend to police it?
So the intention, I think, is going back to the short-term rental policy, that the use of short-term rental of a dwelling unit stays accessory, so secondary to the use of the dwelling as a residence for someone that is part of the community. And 120 days would allow that residence to still be a primary residence or be rented out for multiple months out of the year. that it's also a practice that has been seen in many other municipalities that had the same intent. And as far as how we are going to monitor that, I think that will be a learning curve, but the short-term rental policy has set out that we use online monitoring that will flag an estimate of the number of days the unit will be rented out. And I think the general enforcement approach is complaint-based, so it would really depend if that unit was seemed to be rented out for the majority of the year and getting complaints on it.
Okay, well, the industry response to that is good luck on the control. And you're now going to incur extra expense by using a monitoring system like host compliance. And you're also going to herd rentals into the high yield part of the year. Let us just say June, July, August, September for the sake of argument. So it works counter for people trying to work on a strategic tourism plan to spread tourism over a 12-month period. Why would you let your property for $100 in October if you can let it for $200 in August? Well, everyone's going to go for the high revenue months. And generally the industry scuttlebutt is, well, you try controlling it because no one else has been very successful. It's really hard. And then you want to ask for the industry's support on the 3% tourism. And you can see already you're getting a pretty negative response to that because they're saying, excuse me, why would we support you with a 3% tax when you're going to slap 120 days on us? So the people out there in the industry are pretty incensed. We're also, and I wish we could do the same as we did with the previous one, Emma, defer this, because while you're slapping controls, be they fines or days they can operate, the industry doesn't exist. And it doesn't know what it's coming back to in post-COVID days. So you're sitting here, or we're sitting here, writing regulations for an industry which is closed. I mean, how painful is that if you're part of this industry? So what I'm saying is that this business is going to have to wake up in time, a scheduled opening, and goodness knows what that's going to look like, with all the rules and regulations about hygiene and cleanliness and whatever, and all the new things it's going to have to deal with. So I'm asking, and I think I'm asking council colleagues, why are we discussing this now? Surely in all humanity, we could defer this bylaw till the industry knows what it's facing in post-COVID days, and we can have some genuine discussions with the people who are part of it and come up with a sensible bylaw with everybody's agreement, that which includes, by the way, the proper tax on room revenue, which is contributed between tourism and housing. But surely this is a horrible time to do this to these poor people whose businesses are shut and they're just having to cope with nothing, just like this entire industry is. So I just wonder whether we could show a little humanity and postpone this for a while.
All right, thanks, Michael. Allison, did you? Speaker.
Am I next on the list, Hope?
Speaker.
Maureen is next.
Okay, sorry, Maureen.
I would not support deferring this. These bylaws have been in the works for a significant amount of time. And what we are considering tonight is first reading. And if it passes first reading, then it's going to go to the various committees, the Islands Trust, and we will get additional feedback on what is proposed. Emma was talking about implementation and assessment going into the fall of 2021. I think it's actually completely appropriate to proceed with this at this time. And when
okay, thank you.
May I just add, we're not not just consulting, we're just not just getting feedback from members of the, from accommodation providers on these bylaws. We're also getting feedback from the community. We're also getting feedback from people who are in difficult housing situations. So I don't want to close the door on hearing that kind of feedback at this point in order to move forward with something that we have been addressing since 2017, 2018.
All right. Who's next there, Hope?
Allison, then Sue Ellen.
Okay, Allison.
Okay. Thanks, Emma. As you know, I'm not keen on this. I guess I thought I'd seen a reference in here. Now I can't find it. You've got this report from host compliance, and I can't remember where it was. Maybe it was in the previous one. Can we get a copy of that?
I think so. I'll have to double check if they're okay with it. I don't think it was publicly shared at any point.
Well, you can share it in closed confidential to council, but I'd like to see it. I'm having real trouble with the numbers.
Sure.
And then I guess looking at the designated person, the bylaw, and I think in your notes you're talking about they have to be available
24 hours.
24/7, but what are they supposed to be on island, or can they be in Montreal or California, or where is this designated person supposed to reside or be available from? Are they supposed to be available to respond in person or by telephone call to nuisance complaints?
Well, I think they would need to be on island to be able to respond.
Your bylaw doesn't say that.
It could be, yeah, it could be an amendment if you feel that's necessary.
I think if you want, you need to be clear. If the designated individual is supposed to be available, then you have to say available in person, not by telephone or email. And then what kind of insurance coverage are you talking about?
To operate a dwelling unit as a short-term rental.
Okay, but you're saying proof of insurance. So what are they supposed to give you? A liability insurance level, or to show that their insurance policy recognizes that they're operating it as a dwelling, as a rental?
I would actually need to defer that question to the business licensing inspector. They currently require license for other types of businesses, and I don't know what exactly that they look for, but they do need some sort of proof. So it's the same requirement as for any other business.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's something that needs to be sort of written out, so people know what you're talking about in advance. And then the parking spot, one per bedroom. Well, if you're coming with 2 kids, they don't drive. So what is the B&B requirement for parking? Because you could have more than 1 bedroom per B&B. Is it per bedroom?
It's the same.
So they're the same requirements. There's nothing different between the 2 of these. And the land use bylaw I didn't see a definition of limited kitchen facilities.
It's in there. It might not be in the latest consolidated.
Okay, so limited kitchen facilities is already defined in the land use bylaw?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. I'm just not sure which is the latest consolidated version on that.
I didn't go look in the land use bylaw. I didn't realize it was in there, so I was expecting it to be in.
Yeah, it was amended about a year or 2 ago.
Okay.
To include that.
All right. I'm still not keen on the 120 days, and you're talking about by more than 2 adults per bedroom. 17-year-olds aren't adults. So you could have 2 adults and 8 kids in a 2-bedroom rental, the way this is worded.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so that's okay.
Just taking what other municipalities have used. If that is a problem, we could also amend it.
Is that the same? Have we got that same limit on B&Bs?
No.
So why would we treat them differently?
Just because bed and breakfasts are restricted to one room in the dwelling unit. Again, this came out of the consultation and the short-term rental policy. There was discussion around how many people could fit into a dwelling unit. It was never a concern around bed and breakfast.
Well, no, I'm talking about comparability between the two. And a bed and breakfast can have up to 4 bedrooms, if I'm remembering the bylaws correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just don't, you know, a level playing field and even standard. And I, you know, as Michael says, we're going to cram all 120 days into the June, July, August, and September period, and people are already over, you know, that's not going to give us the ability to expand the shoulder season. Here.
Is that
I'll
it,
go
Elsa?
along with first reading, not because I'm in favor of the bylaw, but this way we get it out for more comment. And I guess the last part of the motion is to direct staff to hold an open house. Given the present situation, I don't know that an open house, they've got to have some better way of getting it out there, and it needs to be on the Muni calendar and well advertised, unlike some other events that haven't been. So it needs to really be well advertised, and it may have to be a Zoom open house or something, but you can't, I don't think, have a physical open house.
No, it can't be a physical one.
No. So
all right, anybody else?
maybe open house isn't the right
Okay.
word.
Sue Ellen?
Thank you. Yes, I'm in favor of these bylaws. I think we do need to regulate land uses on the on our municipality on the Bowen. I'm Bowen Island. I'm here in the public interest, not necessarily in the industry interest or the business interest, although I realize those are parts of our community now, as they have been for many years through the bed and breakfast side of things. But I think we need to regulate, and that's why I've been supporting the process all the way through for the past few years here. I think we've got people, as stated earlier, I think it was maybe Maureen, I forget, people are impacted by tourism. We need to regulate for that. There's an affordable housing crisis. We need to think about that and act on this. I think we're already late in acting. I think 120 days gives people the flexibility to book later. If something happens, they can move their dates around, including to accommodate COVID or accommodate family that's coming in that they want to use the property or the auxiliary dwellings and rooms. Anyway, so I'd like to, do you want me to read the motions?
Is anybody else want to chat? My only comment, Emma, which I made the last time too, is there going to be a review after a year or something like that, just to see how everything's working here? I mean, it's obviously a living document, but I'd like to see something in writing that we're actually going to take a look at it a year. I think there was something in there before, a year down the road or something like that, and review it and see if it's working properly. It's, you know, it's not going to be a perfect document going in. There's no question about it. But we'll find what the weaknesses are as we go along.
Mm-hmm. The policy does call for a review, and the original project schedule had that review scheduled for the spring.
Okay.
So this tourist season was supposed to be the trial period. So I don't think that's going to happen. And it's been revised to be in the fall of next year.
Okay. All right, Sue Ellen, go ahead and read it. Thank you.
Okay, that bylaw number 501/2020, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Land Use Bylaw number 57/2002, amendment bylaw number 501/2020, be read a first time. And that bylaw number 502/2020, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Business Licensing Bylaw number 465/2018, amendment bylaw number 502/2020, be read a first time. And that bylaw number 503/2020, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Bylaw Notice Enforcement Bylaw number 196/2008, amendment bylaw number 503/2020, be read a first time. And that council refer bylaw number 501/2020 to the Islands Trust Advisory Planning Commission, Community Economic Development Committee, and the Housing Advisory Committee. And that council direct staff to hold an open house for bylaws number 501, 502, and 503.
All right, I'll second that. Any
I
further
wanted to ask
discussion?
a question before it got seconded. Why aren't we referring all three bylaws to the Economic Development Committee and the Islands Trust? Well, I can see the Islands Trust because it's just the land use bylaw, but what about the business licensing bylaw and the fines bylaw? I don't know why that isn't at least going to the EDC or CDEC.
That's a good question. Actually, I meant it to go to for all the bylaws.
So I'll take it as a friendly amendment that council refer bylaw number 501, 2020 to the Islands Trust, and that council refer bylaws number
502, 503.
502 and 503 to the Economic Development Committee and the Housing Advisory Committee and the Advisory Planning Commission, Community Economic Development Committee, and the Housing Advisory Committee.
All right. Okay.
Friendly amendment. Thank you. Check.
Yeah, thank you. Any further discussion?
Can I add
Yes,
one
Allison.
more?
Yeah.
And rather than open house, to hold appropriate community consultation
Sure.
and extensive.
Friendly amendment there.
Yep.
Appropriate is right. It's appropriate. Okay, I'll ask a question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so, and, okay, no, is that unanimous?
Yes.
As
Okay.
I said, it was
all right.
unanimous only because I want to get it out there for comment, not because I'm keen on it.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Allison. Okay,
Yes,
we're gonna move to
likewise.
6.4. And that's the traffic and use of streets bylaw number 133, 2005, amendment bylaw 517, 2020. And that, again, back to you, Emma.
Thank you. I'm gonna get good at this share screen thing.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the last one for me. Bringing forward amendment to the traffic and use of streets bylaw as part of the speed reduction project. And a bit of context for speeding on the island. As you all know, the public roads on the island are all built to rural road standards, which mean they have little to no shoulders. And with the mountainous terrain, they're often steep with sharp turns and very easy to create hazardous conditions for all road users, especially if vehicles are going faster than the speed limit. Oops. And indeed, speeding concerns have often gone to council and the Transportation Advisory Committee. And it was one of the top concerns that came out of the community engagement for the transportation plan. As a result, a speed reduction project was included in the transportation plan as priority element A8, with the intention to establish robust speed regulation through effective enforcement and traffic calming measures. This project was part of the 2020 transportation work plan that was approved by council at the March 9th council meeting. And the speed bylaw amendment is a first step in this project because the Provincial Motor Vehicle Act sets the speed limit at 50 kilometers per hour in all municipalities, with the exception of 30 kilometers per hour in areas adjacent to schools and public playgrounds. So any speed limit other than those in a municipality will need to be adopted by bylaw. For this, a map of the island was created so that every road segment could be assigned a speed limit, and this map can then be used to create a speed regulation bylaw. And once that bylaw is adopted, speed limit signage still needs to be installed in the appropriate areas, and that will be followed by the development of traffic calming policy and public engagement. So the next steps is bringing this bylaw through to adoption and then installing the appropriate speed limit signs. The cost of these signs are quite significant, and it's actually usually the main obstacle for municipalities to set lower speed limits. Bowen Island was very fortunate in that it received some seed grant funding, Vision Zero grant funding from Vancouver Coastal Health last year, amount of $10,000 to acquire speed limit signage. So we are ready to go with the signs. Once the bylaws adopted and the signs are up, staff will be working on a traffic calming policy this summer, which will be brought to council and public engagement in the fall. So hope that was short and sweet. Staff recommends that council give first, second, and third reading to the speed bylaw number 517. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Emma. Yeah, I'm a little concerned. The 30K ones are fine. The 20K ones are a little ridiculous in my thought. We have trunk roads where Grafton Road, where sections that are only 100 yards long are down to 20K. Doesn't make any sense. I understand that they are the critical points on the trunk road coming across. And then Cowan Point Drive down to 20 is absolutely ridiculous. These are roads that were created for a 40K speed limit. And I'm not into reducing speeds to police the island. So I'm very concerned on the Cowan Point one and on the trunk road, on the sections of the trunk road. I mean, I understand why they're there, but you know, to put a 20K speed limit on a curve, I think on Cowan Point Drive there is a 20K speed limit, Allison?
It's not a speed limit, it's a caution. Arrow, turn, curve sign, yeah. 20K for the curve. That's the only sign other than a 40K that's already there.
Yeah. So I have a problem with those. The rest of them I don't have a problem with. I certainly don't have a problem with any of the 30s, especially in the community areas. The neighborhood areas should all be 30. 20K on some of the roads. I would say that going out to where is it, Woods Road out there or something like that. I mean, that's just hazardous all over the place. But I think we have to look at those a little bit closer. I can't go along with the map the way it is right now, that's for sure.
So just wanted to actually add to that because Allison had asked previously the source of the speed limits. And as I'd mentioned, this was gathered through the RCMP and Public Works and through the existing signage, which I had also mentioned was quite sporadic, and this is a starting point. So if there are areas that are definitely wrong, please point them out. I do need to run it by Public Works since the roads are really under their domain and they have a better idea of what the design speeds are. But the area of Trunk Road that you were concerned with, Gary, could you be more specific?
Just the corner at Meadowbrook Corner, or whatever you want to call it, just before you go up to Cowan Point Hill. I mean, that's obviously, you know, a critical area. And the other one, of course, is the top of the corner coming out of the cove here, where there's a hard left turn and then a right turn. And those are both areas that, you know, people aren't going to be going 40K in there anyway. But 20K, yeah, I mean, you're going from 40K down to 20K for 100 yards and then back up to 40K again. There doesn't seem to be much, in my mind. It wasn't very well thought out. There's also a 30K on Josephine Drive.
No, there isn't. It's on Salal, and it's
on Salal. Sorry, I'm sorry. It's on Salal.
And Salal's no different than Josephine and Forest Ridge.
No, I understand that.
And Salal's currently signed 40.
It was, and then, you know, what happened, a little bit of history here. There was a 30K sign put on Salal because one person on Salal said that, you know, she thought that the speed limit should be taken down. There was a discussion after that. And, you know, we can't have one person on a road determining that it's going to go down to 20K or 30K. You know, we have a roadwork system here that also has to work. And I'm not, like I say, I'm not in big favor of trying to, the municipality policing the roads. Anyway, that's my part of it. Anybody else?
I next.
Yeah, go ahead, Alison. And then Rob.
Well, I would really like to see the documents you got from the Public Works Department, Emma, because I can't, currently, as I said, there's a 40K sign at the entrance to Salal Road. Salal Road is the same type of construction as is Josephine Ridge and Forest Ridge Drive. They all have a divided line down the middle of them. There's just no logic or rationale to why anything has been picked on here. And in 25 years, I've never seen a 20K sign except the curve sign, which is not a speed limit sign, my husband keeps reminding me. Summer job was Public Works in the District of West Vancouver, so he's quite familiar with speed signs and curve signs and all that stuff, even though it was many years ago. And why Seymour Bay Drive would be left out, which is a road which has houses and kids on it. And Cowan Point Drive has a trail that was built down it, and yeah, there's no logic, rhyme or reason to any of this. The only things I could support would be the caution curve slow down signs, and those aren't speed limit signs, as I get reminded. Those are caution curve slow downs at Meadowbrook and by Tamara's house on Cowan Point Drive and Charlie's Lane corner. And that's it. Everything else should be 40K, the 30K for the schools, and the people at Hood Point would like to have the strip by their tennis courts at 20, which they asked for. And all the people in White Sails were asking for traffic calming and slower speeds, and White Sails isn't on the map. There is no logic to this, so I can't support any of this.
All right, anybody else?
If I could respond really quickly about
sorry,
the
Rob,
documentation.
Yeah, go ahead.
From Public
Rob and
Works.
then Maureen and Swellen.
The documentation, there isn't any. There is bits and pieces of GIS data that have been put together. Public Works has had all this data, and they supposedly verified it. I understand that Patrick is not entirely familiar with the island. But like I said, this is the starting point based on the data that we have. It was never complete, and we're trying to get there. So if there are issues, please let me know. Send me a list, and I will bring that to Patrick, and we will revise the layer, the data that we have.
I just told you the issues. There shouldn't be any speed limits of 40K, and that's it on the island. And a couple of the corners
maybe you should wait your turn.
Yeah. Okay, Rob.
Yeah, thanks for that report, Emma, and I'll be supporting it. I think I know a couple of other municipalities have had frustrations with enforcing lowering speed limits and not being able to enforce them because of the motor vehicle act's 50 kilometers limit. And I think, you know, if there's areas where we need to change some limits, we can still do that. I don't see any issue with us doing that on an ongoing basis. I just want us to be able to have the ability to enforce these speed limit signs, which in my understanding right now, as it stands, we cannot enforce even to 40 kilometers. Am I correct in that, Emma?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
I think that is correct from what I understand. My concern is once those speed limits go down, you can never put them back up.
Yeah.
So I think Sue Ellen?
Maureen and then Sue Ellen and Dave.
Maureen, sorry. I haven't got you on my screen here.
I think that there was a rationale for embarking on this, and it was presented as part of the transportation plan, and we also gave approval as a council to move ahead with it. If we don't like what Emma has presented, then we give feedback on that. I think we've seen evidence at the council table tonight that local residents will have all sorts of objections to the routes that they travel on their way home and around the island. hence the focus on Cowan Point and so forth. I'm sure that other members of the community would have concerns if they were aware of this. And I don't think that there is a high degree of awareness that this is being brought forward. So the only part of this that at this point I have reservations about is giving first, second, and third reading in one go to a document that we're seeing for the first time. So I'd like to propose the recommendation, but I'd like to change it to that we read it a first time, and that Emma take into consideration some of the concerns that have been raised here, and that we see what comes back to us at the second time. I respect the work that's being done here. So I'm going to read the recommendation that bylaw 517/2020, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Traffic Use of Streets bylaw number 133/2005, amendment bylaw number 517, be read a first time.
I'll second that.
Okay, and Sue Ellen, you had something to comment?
Yeah, I'm happy to have it moved and seconded, so I can just, we can do a bit of discussion here. I'm totally in support of all the hard work that staff have done and addressing our first ever transportation plan in this integrated and systematic way. I like the speed reduction project. Certainly my time on council, mostly I've been hearing people asking us to slow traffic, usually for safety reasons. We've heard about a lot of hikers coming to Bowen and peace and tranquility and things like this. I think we have visitors among us, as we know from the short-term rental discussion we just had. And so better signage and better ability to make it clear what we're expecting and is a good idea, I think. Active living policy, we've got all kinds of things. Alternative transportation and affordability. Right now, more people need to be outdoors and have more room to move. Lots of good reasons. I'll be supporting this motion.
All right, anybody else?
Yeah, me, Gary.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I support this as well, and it's good work. But however, I have heard, the several council members are concerned about specific issues, and I'm sure there'll be all kinds of other folks in the community who will too. So I support Maureen's idea of just giving it first reading, and then we'll improve this. Emma will have a look at what folks are saying, and we can improve it over time. Okay, so I'm in favor of. That's why I seconded what Maureen suggested.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll ask a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? I think it's Councillor Morris and Ander in opposition.
And Winan. Did I see?
Winan?
No. I support it.
Okay, I thought I saw your hand. So just Morris and Ander.
Hold on, Hope. I'm so sorry. I had a bit of a phase there. You're going to have to run that through me again, because I as my screen went in 3 directions at once, I got a horrible feeling. Can you just read that out again? I am so sorry, but it is me. I've had a sort of a whatever it is on my machine. So you're going to have to read that out again.
Would you like me to read the vote or the?
No, just a shortened version of the bylaw, because I got the fact that it's for reading 1.
Yes, that's it. So we're just giving bylaw 517/2020 first reading at this time.
Okay, now I am really going to have to apologize, because you asked for those in favor.
Yes.
Yeah, did you get my hand in favor?
We did.
No, I apologize. I'm opposed to this, and that's my mistake, and I'm going to just have to ask you to readdress it.
So yeah, no problem. So that's Ander, Kale, and Morris in opposition.
In opposition, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Emma. I think we're gonna let you go now, I think, eh? All right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, so staff reports, we're gonna move on to 7.1, the climate action strategy. Bonnie, interim manager, Bonnie Brokenshire, interim manager of the Environment, Parks, Planning, and Bylaw Services.
So Bonnie, I will share my screen with the group.
I'll share mine. So
okay.
Yeah, I'll share mine. Yeah, thanks.
Is that working?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
David, you're unmuted, are you?
Yep.
To help, great, thanks. Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. And David Hawking, Councillor Hawking, and myself will be presenting the Climate Action Strategy this evening with the intent of obtaining Council approval. The strategy is being brought forward to Council as a follow-up to the Bowen Island Municipality's declaration of a climate emergency, which occurred on October 28th, 2019. And the strategy is in keeping with the municipality's Island Plan strategic commitments. I want to say off the top that in your council package, there's also the original version of the climate change strategy, it was called back then. And also there's a track change version that highlights some of the key feedback from staff and also some key feedback from the 6 committees that the strategy was referred to. I just wanted to name the committees now so I don't have to name them later. And that was the Transportation Advisory Committee, the Community Economic Development Committee, the Advisory Planning Commission, the Finance Advisory Committee, the Parks, Trails and Greenways and Advisory Committee, and the Emergency Planning Executive Committee. 6 committees in total. The feedback was gratefully received, and almost all of the comments I can say in some fashion were either incorporated into the strategy or they're part of the implementation strategy for the climate action strategy, the implementation of it. Ultimately, the Bowen Island Climate Action Strategy provides mitigation and adaptive guidance and actions. Some actions are continuations of work that's already in progress, and some actions will be carried out over the next 1 to 3 years, whereas other more complex actions will require longer implementation timeframes. So following adoption, the strategy, I just want to say off the top, will be desktoped. It won't look like this document that's before you today. It will have the Bowen brand look and will be congruent with other Bowen Island municipality plans and guidelines and strategies. So Councillor Hawking, who has been instrumental in the development of this initiative, will now give a little bit of background information and context related to the strategy. I'll just forward it here for you.
So you can see a steep graph going down here. That's to get to 100%, a net of 100% emission cuts by 2050. And that's in order to meet to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. So we discussed this at the Committee of the Whole back a few months ago, but just to make 2 points here. One, to remind you where that came from, and that the Paris Agreement in 2016, countries agreed to limit warming to 2 degrees or better. But they asked the international scientific body to assess whether or not the 2 degrees was good enough or whether we should for 1.5 degrees. And the report that came out last year was really what triggered a lot of the climate declarations and our own work last year. And the scientists said that 2 degrees, there was a significant difference between 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees, and that it's not just an environmental issue, it's a human health issue, a human well-being issue, social justice, an economic issue. And they strongly recommended that we strive to get a warming of only 1.5 degrees. The second point I'd like to make here is with the COVID crisis that we're in right now, one of the things we've learned is the countries that are following the science are doing the best. And that's what we need to do on climate change as well. So next slide then, please.
So I just wanted to go over some of the climate change related actions to date. There's quite a history of climate action on Bowen. And I think that this strategy is a really nice culmination of all the that's been done to date. So in September 17, 2007, Bowen Island Municipality signed the BC Climate Action Charter and committed to submitting climate action revenue incentive reports each year. On December 12, 2016, Council received the Bowen Island Community Energy Emissions Plan, the CEEP,
And February 27th, 2017, Council approved the Community Energy and Emissions Plan Implementation Report. And I want to say that at the time, Councillor Fast and Councillor Nicholson were council champions and were instrumental in developing these reports. Links to the CARIP and the SEEP, I want to say, also can be found on the Climate Action Program page on our website. On March 15th, 2019, inspired by Greta, the Bowen Island youth took part in a March for Climate Action. March 25th, 2019, the Islands Trust declared a climate emergency for the Islands Trust area. And that same day at a regular council meeting, the Bowen Island Municipality Council considered a climate emergency declaration and asked ECAC, the Environment and Climate Action Advisory Committee, to work on a strategy. September 27th, 2019, there were businesses on Bowen, quite a few businesses, and the Bowen Island community members, many in number, participated in the global climate strike. October 15th, 2019, Councillor Hawking presented a draft climate action strategy at a committee of the whole. And then on October 28th, 2019, at a regular council meeting, council declared a climate emergency and committed to developing a strategy to reduce emissions and limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. I wanted to say also that the same resolution from the October 28th meeting referred the draft Bowen Island climate change strategy to municipal staff and to the 6 committees. Originally it was 5 committees and the emergency committee was added as the 6th. The strategy, or as a result of the feedback, the changes were made to the draft strategy, and just some notable changes that came out of that. As I said earlier, the original name was the Climate Change Strategy. We changed it to the Climate Action Strategy just to align better with our climate action program. And also there was some structural changes to the original strategy, which moving into the next slide, Councillor Hawking will present the new and improved framework and related actions items that have come out of our feedback.
So structurally here, it was pretty similar to what we had last fall, except that we had 10 strategies. And I should say, like Bonnie, the presenting to all the committees was really very interesting. Everybody was extremely supportive and all the ideas were really good from the different perspectives that everybody brought. So it was really great to have done that. And it's organized into those 3 baskets that you can see over on the right side. And that's really for 3 reasons. We're a small municipality. We don't have a huge amount of resources, so we can't do everything at once. And longer term also because things are going to change over time. We need to be flexible. We need to be reactive. We know that other organizations, other levels of government are going to be making changes and policies and so on that we can hitch a ride on. And finally, of course, is we're not in charge of the whole thing. So part of that is support and advocacy. So on the next slide, we'll just start going through some of the strategic elements. So of the 10 strategies, the first cluster is to reduce emissions. And so we start with transportation. Maybe just click down on all of them, Bonnie. I think I'll just go over it. So transportation, as all of you know, because our heating is with electricity and that's low emission, and because we don't have a lot of industry, really most of our emissions are from transportation. So the first 3 of these bullets, first 3 of the strategies are around transportation. And they're kind of obvious. Number 1, we need to move to alternatives, whether that's personal active transportation or taking the bus. There are a bunch of strategies and actions that are proposed on that. Low or zero emission transportation options. We've got some elements in there that will help encourage people to use zero emission electric vehicles. And finally, the interesting one, reducing the need for transportation. This is, in many municipalities, the biggest thing that the municipalities themselves or regions can do. It's all around zoning. And for us, because transportation is so important, if we can do more things on the island, whether that's a health center, whether that's our community center, whether that's composting and so on, then it reduces the emissions from transportation. And then finally, number 4 is the energy performance of buildings, because heating is still significant, and we've already taken good action on that, where we're moving to the to move forward on the step code to level 3 in October of this year, I believe. And so the next strategies are around adaptation, and the critical part of adaptation is getting to understand what kind of changes are we going to have in terms of our climate, and then figuring out how we can protect ourselves from that, from both our built infrastructure and our natural systems. And so for our built infrastructure, number 5, it's really all about our asset management plan. It's making sure that when we look at our assets, from our roads to our culverts to everything else, is that we're recognizing that things will be changing, that summers will be getting hotter, longer, and drier. And the weather in the winter and shoulder seasons will be getting stormier. So we'll be having more intense rainfall and wind events. So that's why we need to make sure that those kind of changes are built into our understanding of our asset management work that we do. Increased protection from droughts. Now, one of the things that our committees recommended is that we had droughts and wildfire as sitting in the same category, and they separated them out because the actions are really quite different. The droughts, because our summers are going to be longer and hotter and drier, that's a real problem for us, but it's not that we're going to be short of water. There'll probably be more water, more rain in the winter, more rain overall in the year. So the issue becomes storage. And so there are various ways that we can look at that, and they're in the strategy. Wildfire, the approach that we're taking already with some of our work is good, but we need to look at some other work as well. For example, how do we get in and out of some of our areas if they're threatened by wildfire with our hub and spoke sort of road system. Then our natural systems, it's really important because our trees are really important for us in an array of ways. Obviously, they hold on to a whole lot of carbon, but they're going to be really stressed with the drier, hotter summers. Some of our hemlocks and firs will have a lot of trouble. So one of the points that we make is we need to enhance the connectivity to reduce fragmentation from things such as logging, but also policies such as conservation development, so that we're clustering development rather than spreading it all over the place. Finally, the agriculture, an attempt for us to look at ways where we can be a little bit more self-sufficient on our island. One of the recent scientific studies, as you might have seen it, among the dire warnings about the COVID emergencies has been one around climate change causing intense food problems and hunger around the world. And so being able to grow our own food as much as we can is, obviously we're not going to be growing our own wheat and be self-sustaining in this, but it can help us a little bit, and it also provides some economic activity. So those are both basically the strategies, along with our last one, which is getting active support. Obviously, we can't do this unless the public is with us. And so there are a number of, in the document, you'll see a number of ideas and proposals for moving forward. But I will say that the presentations that we already did to the different committees were a really interesting way to get thoughts from a variety of people, and it engaged, I don't know what the total number of people was, Bonnie, but I don't know, probably about 50 people in the community just from doing that. So I'll turn it back to you, Bonnie, for implementation.
So how will the strategy be implemented? And we're looking at many actions that are included in the strategy will be incorporated into future plans, like the official community plan updates, land use bylaw amendments, community energy and emission plan updates, which there is an update scheduled for early in 2021, and other current and future relevant plans. Actions not requiring extensive staffing or financial resources will, sorry, I can't read there and I haven't memorized, but actions not requiring extensive staffing or financial resources will be included in staff and committee work plans, and implementation plans will be created and carried out. Detailed plans will be created for complex actions and those requiring financial resources, bylaw amendments, and council approval. For actions that have financial implications, a cost-benefit analysis may be carried out to fully understand the expenditure in terms of climate action. The strategy will be shared through BIM's communication dissemination network, and actions in the strategy that require communication material to be produced and distributed will involve Environment Department staff with the assistance from the Bowen Island Municipality Communication Coordinator. So also, I think an important point, it is the intent of the interim manager of environment that an annual climate action strategy progress report will be brought forward to council. And that leads to the recommendation before council this evening, which is that council approve the climate action strategy as presented at the April 27th to 2020 meeting.
All right. I'll move that recommendation. And was there a second out there?
I'd be happy to do that if I could.
Sure you can. Thanks, David. And any further discussion? Great. Then I'll ask a question. All in favor?
A minute, you didn't look at the hands.
What?
Didn't look at the hands. I have my hand,
Not seeing your hand.
Okay. I've got a process issue. I think there's some things in here that suggesting we can do that we can't do.
Okay.
And also, if the strategy is to have an annual report every year, shouldn't that be part of the strategy document? And you're talking about getting community buy-in and community win-in, because most of these things, a lot of them, the community is going to have to do. Yet we're going to adopt it and everything before we really seek broad community input. So from a process perspective, I think we need to receive it and ask staff to tidy up the presentation a bit and do some community consultation. Because otherwise,
that's a good point. Yeah.
The consultation is just going to be, well, you've already adopted it, so why are you asking me?
How does everybody feel about that? Sue Ellen?
Yeah, well, I'm in support of adopting this climate strategy. We've done a ton of work on it already, and everybody knows from the history that that Bonnie showed at the beginning there, to the Children's Climate March, and all the work that's been done by the community as well over the years. I think it's time to, we can't delay anymore. It's time to act, and by adopting this or approving this plan, it includes a whole section there, number 10, which is engaging Bowen residents. And this has had a lot of application through our committees, and I don't think there's anything that's re-greening projects where applicable. Like, there's nothing very super defined here that's going to require huge public input, and if it is, then it'll be done through this through the plan and through the strategy number 10 there, I think. And I would like to get on with it, so I'm prepared to make the motion, except you guys already made it and seconded it.
Yeah,
so I'm in support.
All right, anybody else?
Maureen's hands up.
Oh, sorry, you're not on my, Maureen. Yeah,
I don't have anything to add. I'll just vote.
Okay, then I'll ask the question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And opposed? Allison,
Process.
Councillor Morris in opposition. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, David and Bonnie. That's great. That was a lot of work there.
Thank you very much.
7.2 is Heritage Alteration Permit, HAP-01-2020 is 1314 Miller Road. MP Light Body Limited. And Jennifer Ray Pierce, Planner 1. It's all yours, Jennifer.
Hello, thanks for having me in my first Zoom session, Mayor and Council. Very nice to talk with you this evening. Okay, so I think Hope has the slides, so I'll let her know when to change slides. So this heritage alteration permit 01-2020 is the first, oh, just go back to the beginning.
Sorry.
The first heritage alteration permit that's being presented to council ever since the beginning of our municipality. So I'll be giving a little intro to what this is and why it's been chosen for this. Originally, this application came in as a development variance permit. And through the process of consulting with the applicant and seeing the site, it has transformed into a heritage alteration permit that includes within it the variance as well as some heritage protection. So a heritage alteration permit is permitted via the Local Government Act in Section 617. And typically it's applied to sites that already have a heritage designation or are part of a heritage register or have some kind of heritage recognition of some sort. They can also have a heritage covenant. So included within this application will be, is the heritage covenant and heritage alteration permit. So a heritage alteration permit is authorized for changes on sites that would require a variance to the zoning and do not relate to changes in use or changes in density, but they may vary the lot coverage. And this slight difference in meaning was confirmed with legal counsel. A heritage covenant, so you'll notice in the attachments that there's both a heritage covenant and a heritage alteration permit. The heritage covenant references the heritage application permit. Okay. So it's a little confusing, but that seems to be the way that these things are done. And this is based on both conversations with Donald Luxton, the heritage consultant that we used at the Heritage Commission with his office, and also in by basing this on Delta's heritage covenant paperwork, which was used kind of as a template to create these two documents. So the heritage covenant is entered voluntarily by the owner. There's nothing that would compel them necessarily from a legal perspective to enter into such a covenant. So early in the process, I notified the applicant that this could be a potential site that would be eligible for a heritage application permit instead of a development variance permit. And they were very happy to consider that. And they've reviewed the heritage application permit documentation, and this has their support. So this is a voluntary agreement with them and the municipality, and that's under Section 219 of the Land Title Act. So it's very similar to other Section 219 documents that have been seen by council. Okay, so I can move to the next part now, Hope. So this particular application is in the Miller Landing neighborhood. The address is 1314 Miller Road. It's an SR2 zone, and it's quite a large lot, much larger than almost all other SR2 zoned lots. And in the SR2 zone, you're permitted to have as much lot coverage according to a percentage of the site. According to a square meter, a fixed square meter amount. So when you have a large lot, that fixed square meter amount is a very small percentage of the site. So the history of this site is pretty interesting. Here you see a site plan that has that kind of oddly shaped large outline in the center is the primary residence. And there's several other structures that you'll see here. There's a pool, there's a boathouse, there's a secondary building that was once a garage and is now bedrooms. There is a gatekeeper's house in the lower left-hand corner, and the lower right is the heritage structure that is of interest for the heritage application permit. So the variance that they're looking for here is to increase the lot coverage to a 5.9%, which is about a little bit more than double of the square meter coverage. So normally it's limited to 500 square meters. This is just over 1,000. And the reason for this large discrepancy is that when all of these buildings were built, other than the ones they're asking for now, originally, that 500 square meter limitation was not in place yet. It did come into place very soon thereafter. In fact, it kind of coincided with their permit application, but they put in their permit application prior to that limitation being in place, which was in 2002. So they have kind of a pre-existing non-conforming condition with regards to lot coverage. So now that they'd like to do quite a small little set of additions here, they have a kitchen addition that's 8.25 square meters and 2 roof extensions, which do count as part of lot coverage, that total 18.32 square meters. Because they're already over their lot coverage, even this small addition bumps up against that limitation. And so let's go to the next slide. You can get a better idea of the additions. Yeah, so here's the kitchen addition. It's just an extension of the pantry space for the kitchen, and it's on the side of the building that faces the island itself, so opposite to the shoreline. And the building is tucked down, as you can see from the first photograph. That's just standing looking towards the building. The second photograph, I had to walk down quite a ways to get that view. So the standard view of someone that was walking around the building or that was in a neighboring lot would be even further from this, but it doesn't really impact much of the view anywhere because it's tucked so much down into the site because the site is quite sloped. But it is an extension of the building. Yeah. Then the next one is 2 roof extensions, which you'll see based on the photo, they're already somewhat constructed. And this is because the building there, as I said before, was a garage and it has been transformed into bedrooms with a building permit that did not change the lot coverage at the time. And then 2 roof extensions were added as part of the construction project, which then triggered this need for an additional lot coverage variance. So on the left and on the right, those 2 roof extensions, which the one on the left is intended for a car to park underneath, so because they're losing their garage function to transform into bedrooms. It would be a covered car park. And the one on the right is non-functional. It is there for an aesthetic purpose to create a balance on either side of the structure. And then the final slide here is photographs of the heritage structure. So the heritage structure, the owners call it a tea house, but there's no indication that that is what it was actually used for. And we don't have any documentation at this time of the history of the structure, but this is something that the Heritage Commission could look into as part of referring to that commission, as is recommended to council now. So the structure appears to be of like the Union steamship era and is obviously older than the house and was there when the owners first came and predates all of the other construction there. And seems to be, but I don't know for sure, somewhat in the original condition. The owners have so far been maintaining it more or less how they found it, and the heritage application permit will require that they either keep it how it is now at this moment in time or restore it to some historical condition based on documentation. So that's part of the restriction. And the other part is that they maintain visibility from the nearby beach access. The photo on the left shows a fence demarcating the edge of the property line to the beach access. So we're standing in the beach access trail and looking at their property and seeing the heritage building. So it requires that view of that structure be maintained to the extent to which they can on their own lot, knowing that the municipality is in charge of vegetation on this side or other blockades. And then finally, it also asks the owners to research the structure and produce a sign that explains the history of the structure to the extent to which there is information available, and provides that sign to the municipality like for external use to be installed on the beach walkway, so that we would have a permanent sign in place where people can see the structure and have some understanding of its historical value. Next slide. I think that's the last one. Yes. So the recommendation is just to this presentation is just to introduce the HAP 01-2020, and we're recommending that this permit be referred to the Heritage Commission and rely on their knowledge of heritage on the island to comment on its value to the island. And then also that we would give public notice similar to a DVP, since this does have a variance involved, to the public. So that's kind of the summary of the recommendations.
All right, thanks very much, Jennifer. That's very unique. Anybody have any questions from Jennifer? No? That's awesome. Anybody
think Sue
out there?
Ellen has her hand raised.
Okay, go ahead.
It's not really a question. It's just that you've answered a question for me because I'm very familiar with that Miller Landing's main beach access, the big wide one. And that's why it was called the landing, was because that's where the boats came in. It was sort of a picnic area. It was back when Bowen didn't have ferries and everybody came to the island by boat. So that was one of the main landings. And I've always wondered about that little structure because it is so visible. So I'd just like to say, thank you for the information and your creative approach with the landowners, and I think this is great, and I'm in support.
Thank you. Anybody else? I'll just read the recommendation. The council.
I think Maureen has her.
Oh, sorry, Maureen. I didn't have you on the screen there. Maureen, go ahead.
No, it's just to reinforce some of the points that Sue Ellen just made here. I'm really pleased to see this come forward in this way. I'm not familiar with the building at all, and looking forward, I hope, to learning more about it. Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, that's a good one. So the recommendation is the council refer the heritage alteration permit HAP 01-2020 to the Heritage Commission for comment, and the notice be given. The council will be considering the issuance of heritage alteration permit HAP 01-2020 for the variance of building lot coverage from 500 square meters to 1,063.02 square meters, 5.9% of the lot size, and the preservations of the heritage structure at 1314 Miller Road, legally described as Lot E, Plan 22929, District Lot 1553, PID 016-284-712, at the May 25th, 2020 meeting of council, and the council authorized staff to give notice for the consideration of the issuance of heritage alteration permit HAP 01-2020 in accordance with section 499 of the Local Government Act to all properties within 100 meters of the legal boundaries of 1314 Miller Road, legally described as Lot E, Plan 22929, District Lot 1553, PID 016-284-712. Second to Sue Ellen. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 How's that look?
Everyone.
Everyone, isn't that wonderful? Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jennifer. That's great. Correspondence, the Bowen Island bus service. Who's going to talk to that? Dennis, do you want to talk to her? Do you want me to?
I can just start this, Your Worship.
Okay.
You'll see under 8.1, there's correspondence listed. So we've had letters come in from residents of the community expressing concern that TransLink is considering not only the reduction, but the elimination of the bus service on Bowen somewhere around mid-May. And in response to that, the corporate officer has put this on the agenda with the recommendation that, and you'll see it on the agenda, the council authorize a letter to be sent under the mayor's signature to TransLink, providing alternatives to the proposed reduction in bus service on Bowen Island. So the intent here is to get a letter off as soon as possible, like tomorrow, to TransLink, in the hopes that they will look at our situation on Bowen as different from other areas, because there are people on Bowen that very much depend on the bus service, and there may not be other alternative modes of transportation available to them, whether it's to go to doctor's appointments, grocery shopping, or whatever it may be. So it's a necessary service that they depend on, and I think that council probably would wish to express those concerns directly to TransLink in the hopes that they may look at Bowen differently.
Thanks, Dennis. Just to add to that, I was looking at the EOC updates today, and I did notice that they said that we were going to lose our bus transportation on the middle of May 14th or whatever it was. So that is not the case. It's they haven't made a decision on it yet, but it's put a lot of people into fear that they're not going to be able to transport. There's a lot of people that go to the ferry, essential service workers. There's home care people that come out. We don't have a taxi system on the island, and it wouldn't be usable anyway. So we're in a very unique situation, and it's not like shutting down Bowen Island is going to save TransLink a lot of money. So I would like to write a letter and just tell Kevin that, you know, we are a unique situation and we don't have options on the island that might be available on the mainland. So I'd like to get that out to him pretty quick and take it from there. Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
I'm okay with it, Gary, but I'm not sure what you're going to say. What it says here is that you would get in touch with them and provide alternatives. I think that there are lots of communities that would make the argument that there would be people who were inconvenienced by a shutdown, a suspension of bus service. How are we going to make an argument for Bowen Island, or what suggestions are we going to make for Bowen Island that are going to be compelling and that we'll hear?
To tell you the truth, I would not be proposing alternatives because I would like them to just keep the bus system on. I think by proposing alternatives, it's going to open up, at this point in time, is going to open up some issues. So I'd like to just sort of feel them out and say, don't cancel anything. We need this service. It's not that spectacular a service to start with, and we'd like it to remain in force. And if they say, well, we're not going to do it, then I think we start looking at alternatives. I'd be very.
So Maureen, and I apologize, I wrote that recommendation.
Yeah.
Council, picking up on the discussion, we could change the recommendation by deleting the words providing alternatives to, and substituting in its place the council authorized letter to be sent under the mayor's signature to TransLink expressing council's concern regarding the proposed reduction, etc.
Reduction or cancellation, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Alan, is that okay, Maureen? Does that?
Yeah. There was some discussion of possibly asking them about running the what is it called, the tap ride program, but maybe keep that as a fallback.
Keep it in the back pocket, yeah.
The idea for suggested alternatives was because of that suggestion, and so that was my bad. But
no
worries. Sue Ellen?
Just that I'm in favor of this. I think this is a good idea, and I couldn't think of very many alternatives either, except to take it down to one bus as a back pocket.
Yeah.
If that's what the tap ride means, I'm not sure what the tap ride was, but I did read a number of letters from people who would be having a terrible trouble, and I think if you can make the point that we don't have a taxi service or Uber or any of those alternatives over here, and that the bus is a crucial lifeline, essential, or something like that.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it is an essential service for us. There's no question about that. Anybody else have any comments?
The tap ride, just for your interest, was the pilot project that TransLink did last summer.
Yes.
Oh, not tap, but transit on demand, whatever.
Yeah.
Tap abbreviation.
That thing.
Yeah, that's what I thought you meant. Yeah, that's a possibility that one bus maybe could be left and use it that way, or figure out the people that need it for medical appointments and do a run that everybody else has to ride on when that one's going or something.
Yeah, well, let's try for 100% and then we'll take it from there.
Well, the criteria that they used, they announced in the public meeting last week was when somebody asked the question, was any runs with 4 to 5 boardings per hour or less were on the suspension list. And the word is suspension, not canceled.
We're so unique here that, you know, and I know that we've only got maybe 30 or 40 people on the bus all day, but those 30 or 40 are very critical.
It's 20 right now.
Yeah, I heard that.
In all 3 runs.
Okay, Hope, can you read that again? What you?
Yeah, the council authorized a letter to be sent under the mayor's signature to TransLink expressing council's concern with the proposed reduction in bus service on Bowen Island.
Okay, I'll move that. Second.
Second.
Okay, I got Sue Ellen up there, David on either or. And last question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, how's that look, Hope? Thank you. Okay. So reports of the committees, Cal and.
Oh, were we going to deal with the correspondence that was removed from the consent agenda, or deal with that under section 11?
Sorry, what was that, Hope? You want to deal with these correspondence?
There's just 2 pieces of correspondence that were contained in the consent agenda that Councillor Nicholson asked to be removed. And
oh yeah. Okay,
I had stuck them under the correspondence section, but I don't think we ever agreed to that formally.
No, we didn't, but I don't mind. Do you want to go to those now? That would be fine. Maureen?
Yeah, so this is items 3.9 and 3.10.
Yes.
In the agenda, and one is from Heather Miller, and she's expressing concern about potential ferry service reductions. And she has a couple of suggestions in that letter that I think are worth taking a look at. One is, and this is a bit of fact checking on my part. One is to encourage municipal staff to establish a list of essential services and workers on Bowen Island. And I'm just curious about whether that has taken place.
Well, I think the EOC did that, didn't they?
Yes, it's been established through the EOC.
It's done, great. And then the other point that she made, 2 more points, is that she would like to see a higher profile given to the Ferry Advisory Committee, its activities, its meetings, and so forth. And I think that actually would be a wise thing for us to be considering. Apparently, it says previously the CEO. I'm not sure if that's a reference to CEO Lalonde or to CEO Back, but that the FAC couldn't use staff to support their activities or minute their meetings. But what I'm finding is that what comes back through the FAC is very cursory, and I mean, Heather is making this point that she would like to see that happen, and I think there needs to be some sort of response to the points that she's making here. What's in the agenda is that we received the correspondence. It doesn't say anything about responding to the correspondence, even in
who's head of the FAC right now?
Melanie Mason.
Can I?
Yes, Sue Ellen.
I just wanted to explain. I'm pretty sure that the Ferry Advisory Committee is actually a committee of BC Ferries.
Yes, it is. I understand that.
That's why the minutes are different and all that kind of thing. So I just, for anybody who's watching.
Yeah, I understand that, Sue Ellen. It's just, given the importance of the Ferry Advisory Committee, I mean, one of the suggestions that she made is even to give a higher profile in our agenda packages to minutes of the Ferry Advisory Committee. And if you go to what BC Ferries has online for the FAC, it's not altogether complete. So when a community member is interested in finding out more, they don't get it all on the ferry site, and they have to dig for it in the municipal side because it's embedded in transportation committee and then gets brought up to council. So there's a profile issue there. And I think she's making a very valid point. At this time of night, I don't want to belabor it further, but I just would like there to be some sort of acknowledgement of her correspondence. Go
Okay.
ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Maureen, that's a really good point, because during all this time with the ferry issues and stuff like that, I haven't heard anything at all come out from the Ferry Advisory Committee. So maybe, like, do we not have any jurisdiction over the FAC?
No.
No, we don't. So Ellen's right, the BC Ferries Committee, and it used to be the BIMTAC and the Ferry Committee kind of used to be the same thing, but that was actually improper, and they're not right now.
Okay.
There is a little bit of crossover membership, but we're really following the way that BC Ferries has organized it, and it's quite separate. And Maureen's point is a really good one. There's it's no easy way for people to find out what's going on. So I think while we can't turn it into something that is under, part of BIM or supported by BIM, nevertheless, we could have an agenda element, or I don't know, some idea as Maureen is suggesting. Not sure.
One simple suggestion, and first I should correct something. Gary, you said we hadn't heard from the Ferry Advisory Committee. Bronwyn did a front page article, an interview with the chair. So there has been some profile recently.
How long ago was that?
Probably a month. The one option would be to invite the FAC chair or the vice chair to come and talk to council and give a brief presentation there about what is going on at the level of the advisory committee. But I'll just put that out there. I don't want to come to a close on this. I just think there's something that we need to be addressing.
No, but shouldn't they be, and I don't know what the terms of reference are for the fact, but shouldn't they be a go-between between BC Ferries and the community or the muni?
Yeah. That's their terms of reference.
Yeah, which we're not getting.
But,
right. Well, maybe we were. I missed that thing on the front page.
Well,
so.
I guess if there's any issues going on, then there's a conduit for issues.
Yes.
And at this point, the ferry schedule hasn't changed, and I don't know whether, I mean, if they've been asked to think about a ferry schedule change, then they should be consulting with us.
Yeah. All I'm saying is if we make a bucket, a place where that kind of exchange can occur more easily with council and to give a higher profile, I think that would be helpful.
Could we have somebody check with Melanie and just feel her out for I don't know, a communication strategy of some shape or description? Because I think your point's very valid.
Sure, I could do that then.
Could you?
Sure.
Okay, thanks, David. And do you want to read that recommendation, Maureen, or with any changes you might want to put in it?
Changes to it, just based on your discussion, that I'll just throw out there, and you can shoot them down if you want. Just as it's read, and that council direct staff to respond to Mrs. Miller to 1, provide the list of essential workers established by the EOC, and 2, acknowledge Mrs. Miller's suggestions regarding the Ferry Advisory Committee and refer her correspondence to the TAC for recommendations to council. That part I don't love.
I'll move that.
Oh,
thank you, Maureen. I'll second that. And all in favor on that one? Aye.
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 Okay, thank you.
And then the second letter, 3.10, is from Oidis Dyke at the USSC Marina.
Yes.
I'm sorry to bring toilets up on the council agenda, but
That's okay.
It's an issue. The library is closed. The restaurants are closed for service. The BC Ferries washroom in the Cove is closed, and we have a local business owner who is saying she's getting nowhere with BC Ferries in terms of them responding to repairing that restroom. and it's creating issues for her business, and she doesn't know where to go.
Okay, well, maybe David, could you raise that with Melanie also?
Can I have a suggested motion
Okay,
to speed things up here? Sorry.
go.
So
As written, and that council authorize a letter to be sent under the mayor's signature to BC Ferries requesting that the terminal washrooms be reopened.
Yeah, they were talking about vandalism, and then it wasn't vandalism, and they just closed it because I don't think they want it used by some people. So, but I think that is something that it should be operational. I agree. So yeah.
If not operational, then they can put a porta potty down there.
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
an interim measure.
Yeah. No, that's a
deal
great
with.
idea. Great idea.
Reopened or an interim measure.
Yeah.
I'll move that. Thank you.
Perfect. I'll second that. And again, I'll ask a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Aye. How's that look? Hope pretty good.
Unanimous, yes.
Thank you. Okay.
I think Rob has frozen. I wonder if he's still on the call.
Rob, you here? Yeah, he's there. He moved.
He's there.
He's got his mic off though.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
We had a
so-
vote, just to make it, Rob, we had a vote and I didn't see you move, so I wasn't sure that you were with us, and so I'm checking, that's all.
Thanks, Ellen. Okay, good.
Okay, so we got reports of the committees, Cal and commissions. We got that's a recommendation from the Environment and Climate Action Advisory Committee. Council directs staff to explore the feasibility of establishing a community collection program for used oil with a BC Used Oil Management Association. That looks like either Hawking or Nicholson.
Sure, I'll start, but I'll need Maureen's memory to help. So we had a really interesting presentation back a couple of months ago with a fellow from this BC Used Oil Association. And what they do is they take oil that's used and they have a kind of a receptacle that they set up in a community somewhere. And then they come and take that oil away and they recycle it and it gets back into the system. So we don't have that service on Bowen, and it's trying to remember what they do it at no cost. Maureen, how did that work? Do you remember that part?
Yeah, that was really important. They do it, and there is no cost to the community. They're a nonprofit organization. They do, if I'm remembering correctly, they fund their operations through the resale of the reclaimed oil. And the fellow who made the presentation is Will Burrows from the BC Used Oil Management Association, which sounded like a real snoozer of a presentation. It was absolutely fascinating. He was a terrific presenter, and it sounded like a really worthwhile initiative to explore. So what the recommendation here is asking for, and I know that Bonnie is keen to follow up on this, is to simply explore the feasibility of doing this. So it would look at potential venue, which would likely be at the recycling depot.
Yeah.
And just working through the logistics of it and doing maybe a bit of assessment about how much oil would likely be captured on Bowen.
Yeah, and also it's not just the oil, which is a great part of the program, but they also take the containers and they take antifreeze and they take the oil filters as well.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
It was this little thrill through the committee of, I have so much stuff in my garage and in my basement that has been there for eons, and I could potentially give it to a good cause.
Sounds good to me. I'll move that recommendation. We got a second?
Sure, I'm happy to second.
Okay, thanks, David. And all in favor?
Aye.
I see all hands.
Got them all. Thank you, Hope. Okay, so then we're going to move on to 9.2 with his Raj Harris, Chief Financial Officer, recommendation from the March 9th, 2020 Cold Bay Water System Local Advisory Committee meeting.
It's dealt with.
I believe this recommendation was dealt with through the financial plan and budget process.
Oh, good. Well, then we won't bother with it then. Would that be correct, Hope, do you think?
No, it was dealt with. It says in the report as well. If you
does it?
a bit of background, this is to do with the water systems master study. Originally, it was a $300,000 proposal, and we reduced it to, and we're taking a phased approach, and we included $50,000 provision in the capital plan, and it gets allocated to various water systems based on the number of connections in each water system respective to the total number of water connections overall.
Sorry, Rob, I think that was supposed to go into the consent agenda. That was my bad.
No problem. As long as it's covered, that's what's the important thing. Okay, 9.3. Councillor Sue Ellen Fast, Council Member, Parks, Trails, and Greenways Advisory Committee, recommendation from its meeting held March the 10th. Sue Ellen.
So here you'll see recommendations from our advisory committee related to the subject that Tom Blackbird spoke about earlier. And this is without the, this was before Tom Blackbird obviously had presented, and in the lack of any information that even, I think staff had made some phone calls, if I'm correct there. I wasn't even at this meeting, but I'm prepared to, having heard, having spoken to Tom Blackbird there, I'm wondering if we could, whether council would like to make the first motion first, that council work with the province to ensure non-motorized use only of Mount Gardner. I move that.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Sue Ellen, Sue Ellen, may I just ask, could we replace ensure with advocate for?
Well, I wondered if another alternative, I wondered if it, I would just bring the committee's thing first, but we could also say, based on what Tom said, to initiate a process to, or to, that council direct staff to develop a written submission to Tom Blackbird. We could make it more specific. I was going with the council's first. What's the will of council?
Given the presentation we did have from Tom, I think there's different avenues to go after this. I mean, the council work with the province. The province is going to be Tom Blackbird. He's going to be the conduit. There's no question about that. I just, I don't.
So maybe it could be that,
sorry,
that council direct staff to initiate a, to contact Tom Blackbird to initiate a process to propose non-motorized trail use on Mount Gardner. Something like that.
Gary, I've got my hand up.
Yeah, Allison, go ahead. I'm just sorry. I'm just trying to.
Just thinking back about what Tom said, he's the impartial adjudicator at the end, and he talked about a member of his staff that does all the work. And I think it would maybe be, if we could be a little bit more generic. I mean, it's FLNRO too. It's FLN, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Whatever. What did they call? What did he call himself?
RST.
Recreation Trail Sites BC.
And that's what he is.
Recreation Sites and Trails.
Okay. He kept talking about an FLRN or something.
RST, he did.
Yeah, no, I saw an FLRN somewhere in his presentation. Hope, are we going to get his presentation so it can be posted online?
Yeah, it'll get posted tomorrow morning.
Okay, great.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, I just
that we defer this to the next meeting and see whether Bonnie can come up with some, and Hope can come up with some better wording.
Yeah, I agree. I'm having a real problem with it here. So given the context of his presentation, I think it's gone beyond that. And I think, anyway, I think it's going to need a little work.
And it would be nice to ask Bonnie to get, since he said those documents were all public documents, to get all those orders and agreements.
Yeah,
Yes.
so maybe the motion could just be that if we need a motion, it could just be that council direct staff to prepare a report and recommendations about non-motorized trail use on Mount Gardner.
Well,
I think something along those lines. Yeah.
Back off one and just ask them to research the to obtain the documents and agreements and orders. And so we can see what we're looking at.
Did you catch that, Hope?
Perhaps we don't even need this if
Okay.
it's coming forward to the next meeting. Not sure, Dennis, what your thoughts are. I think Bonnie's well aware of what council.
Yeah.
Sort of,
You know, I mean,
and we could bring these recommendations back in sort of a.
well, if you want a motion, the one that Sue Ellen suggested that just be referred to staff for a report back at a subsequent meeting with proposed actions or words to that effect.
Oh, I like that.
That's fine.
Okay, I'll
It's a
you
record
got
of
that
it.
move, Sue Ellen?
A report back.
Second that.
Okay.
And I'll ask a question. All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you.
May I just
Okay, new business. Anything from Metro Vancouver Director David Hawking?
Hang on.
Gary, before you go on, may I just confirm, we
Sorry.
had quite a few people at the beginning of this meeting who were very passionate in the presentations that they made. Can we, at this point as a council, affirm that we are committed to moving towards non-motorized use only of Mount Gardner?
Yeah.
Can
I
we
think
do
that's
that?
maybe a discussion we should have in a closed meeting, but because there's obviously it's not as simple as it appears to be. What does everybody think of that?
I don't know why it would need to be closed, and I like the idea of doing a simple affirmation. I second Maureen's motion.
And I agree. I think we need to make some sort of a statement that
Yeah.
we heard folks and we're going to take action in that direction.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to do with my earlier motion.
I
Okay,
thought
so
that's what we were doing
What
with
do
the
we got
motion
for
we
a
had.
motion then?
So
So
I had a perfect motion earlier and then I deleted it. And
Really?
just so we can just do something that council support, sorry, the council support the restriction of motorized use on Mount Gardner. Or we could get more carried away, but
no, I think it's simple is better at this point in time. Sorry, what was that again? Hope that we support.
the restriction of motorized use on Mount Gardner.
Okay, we'll see what that looks like, but yeah.
So then we have two motions. We've got the one asking staff to do a bunch of work on this, but by having the motion that says that we're interested in ending the motorized use of the trails, that we're clearly giving direction to staff in terms of how they will proceed.
Yeah, I don't know if they're conflicting. Because one of them is saying we want staff to look into the motorized, the history of the motorized vehicles on Mount Gardner, and then the other one was said that we're committed to getting rid of them. If that's the way you want to go, that's fine with me. I don't care.
I'm struggling with why it's so complicated. I asked him how we could do this, and he said it could be done with Section 56. You just simply write a written submission to Tom with your concerns and the rationale. And
yeah, no, that's exactly right.
Rationale were, and it was, noise pollution, overly routed, blah, blah, blah.
That's what they had last time. Yeah, the whole works.
Can I read my original motion that I had drafted?
Yes.
So it's not on my screen because my screen is frozen at the moment, but from memory, it was something that the council support advocating for restricting motorized use on Mount Gardner and direct staff to prepare a submission to Tom Blackbird from Recreation Trail Sites BC.
I'll move that.
For this.
Yeah, second that.
Sorry, I need to write it though.
Gary.
Further discussion, go ahead, Michael.
Gary, I'm in support of this as well. I'm just a little bit concerned about the word restricting, because if you say you want to restrict it, that means you will permit some.
Yes.
May I just, because I'm in support of what I frankly would wish the whole thing would go away. The thought of a motorized thing going up there fills me full of the horrors. Right.
Yeah.
But if you restrict it, then you are by definition permitting some, and I'm just looking for
Yeah, I agree.
a better word than restricting.
Prohibit.
Prohibit.
Eliminating.
Yeah, no, prohibit's good. Prohibit's good.
Prohibit's good, yeah. Hope you got that. Are you happy with that, Michael?
My only concern, which is I raised my first question to this, was I'm not sure that Tom Blackbird is necessarily the one to write to, or it's to the Recreation and Trail Sites BC. I just don't, because he's the adjudicator, and whether, did he actually say write to him?
He did. He said,
Okay.
submission to Tom.
Okay.
Yes, excuse me for adding it, but I took that one myself because I am not as familiar, David, as say you are with some of the protocols here, but I got the impression that he was inviting us to actually address correspondence to him directly. I have a note to the effect, because I wasn't sure just who and would it offend, and I'm sure that the note would ask that other suitable agencies be informed, or whatever language, but quite specifically, he was encouraging us, municipality of Bowen, to write to him, and that's what I gleaned from this.
I have that written down too, Michael.
Yeah, just for clarification, one more time, Hope, I'm sorry, but just that motion one more time.
That council support, I'm having trouble with the grammar of the sentence. That council support the prohibition of motorized use on Mount Gardner, and that council direct staff to prepare a submission to Tom Blackbird, Recreation and Trail Sites BC, I get his title, requesting this prohibition, or the prohibition.
Why don't you just start with the council prepare a submission to Tom Blackbird requesting prohibition of motorized use of the trails on Mount Gardner.
Yeah.
Council
we'll leave you at the word. We'll leave you with the wording.
We gotta know the meeting. Let's move on. Yeah.
I'll move that.
Yeah, great. And I second it.
Second somewhere.
Yeah, I second Gary.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
So just regarding the previous motion that was moved, seconded, and carried unanimously, can we rescind that?
Yes, please.
I have a mover and a seconder to rescind that.
Yes, move. Second. Thank you, Hope. Okay, and then back to David on your report.
Oh yeah.
It's getting very late again. Metro Vancouver.
Yeah, so and I mean, so Dennis might already know all this, but one of the things that our CAO talked about, the Metro Vancouver CAO talked about, is working with local governments, recognizing that they're in difficult financial situations, and one of those problems is the payments to Link and to Metro Vancouver. And so staff are talking to the BC government, to UBCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, about how to go forward. This task force working with the CAOs and the CFOs will still be working on that. So, you know, that's one of the issues that Metro Vancouver is working with, and maybe Dennis is already completely familiar with all that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, and I think Raj probably is too. The provincial government has come out and said that municipalities do not have to remit the school tax until December, even though you collect it. You can. It's another way of helping with the cash flow issue. However, on these what they call OTAs, other taxing authorities, as it stands, we have to remit that on the date that it's due. It is, Raj, is it August or October? For the OTAs.
It's most of them are beginning of August.
August, right? Yeah. So that's the issue. But I'd like to hear what Raj has to say about this. But from our discussions, I'm not sure that Bowen has maybe the same concerns about that as some places, because with the with the changes that they've already brought into place, I'm not sure that
Not an issue for us.
yeah, that that we have the problem with paying the OTAs in August, because it all comes back to cash flow.
Ourselves, we shouldn't have an issue paying the OTAs, given that the school tax has been deferred to the end of the year. Even if we do have late payments of our property taxes, there are still steps being taken, there's still pursuit of the provincial government to provide further assistance by the Regional Finance Advisory Group going on. So there's, I mean, they're being, I guess I'm being careful in what I say, because it's just a recent development, so I can't really discuss it, other than the provincial government is still actively being pursued to provide the municipalities with further assistance in appreciation of the measures that they've already put in place already.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So that's it.
All right, David, so you're happy there?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Islands Trust Municipal Trustees, Fast and Kale, anything to up?
Sure, I'll keep it fast.
Please.
Just to let you know, last week Islands Trust Council met online, which was very successful in order to, in a Zoom conference like this, 24 trustees, I think. Anyway, we also reduced the budget a little bit in order to provide some solidarity and some support through the COVID crisis. And so I think Raj has got the new figures and all that kind of thing, and Trust Council approved that budget. So now it's a very climate-oriented budget that is now, climate-oriented strategic plan that's now funded for the next year, and I'll bring details another day.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. Michael, anything to add?
Yeah, I just would agree with Sue Ellen. It was actually it was their first Zoom meeting. And I have to say the trust conducted it extremely well. It went very smoothly. And remember, there's 26 trustees, so quite the tour de force. So kudos to them. I am still just waiting to hear back from their CAO on a follow-up from the meeting we held on Nanaimo. He called me, I think at the end of the previous week, and I'm sure I'll be hearing from him next week, so I can report back then. So
okay, thank you, Michael. Okay, Maureen, update the council, Metro van. Anything going on?
Well, for the parks, the region, the attendance is up something like 40%.
Wow,
a massive increase in parks attendance. I don't think that's the case at Crippen. But our next parks meeting is in about 2 weeks, so I'll have more to report then.
Okay, thank you, Allison.
The last meeting was Thursday, and it was all very well done again by Zoom with like 26 or 24 people on the Zoom and about 10 staff on top of that. So it worked out very well. And it was all about the suspension, the budget, the routes, the need to do the route suspension and why, and logic behind what was picked. And there's still a huge shortfall between like losing 75 million a month, I think, if I've got my numbers right, and all the changes and suspensions and everything are going to maybe reduce that down to 45. So there's still a huge gap, and
yeah,
asking and submissions being made to the feds in the province for support for the transit, and that's coming from all across the country from all the transit agencies.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. The PowerPoint presentation was very good, and it's up on the website, I believe. If it isn't, I will send it to you all.
Okay, thank you. And that brings us right down to, I believe, question period.
There is no one trying to join the meeting at this time.
No,
We
there is
did
not.
Bronwyn in.
Bronwyn didn't make it, eh?
She
Okay,
was
well,
on earlier.
He was
on
here
that,
earlier.
happy note, we'll adjourn this meeting, but we're gonna go back to the closed council meeting when folks are ready.
Just, yeah, hang tight there for a
So
minute.
you want us to leave this meeting and log in again, right? Yeah.
Yes, but I just need to reactivate that meeting. So can you just take a few minute break and try to join in, say 3 minutes?
Okay.
Sure.
Goody, I might get my dessert now.
Might get my dinner now.